Go ahead.
Well, welcome all. And today we have two meetings again. We have a workshop starting now, and we have a regular meeting starting at 4:45. So that means we need to be done, by 4:30, no later than 4:35, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't have anybody after us in the regular meeting, is that correct?
We do not.
Okay, good. So basically what that gives us is 45 to 50 minutes, also depending on comments and stuff like that, with the comment period here. So I'll get to that really quick. But so I guess let's open up the comment period. So again, the phone number is 702-589-9629 for anybody that wants to call in.
Hello?
Yes, I have public comment. May I go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Fred. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, good afternoon. Fred Volz for the record. I wanted to speak, first of all, to Agenda Item 1's ongoing capital projects. There appear to be several questions that need answers. First, how many of these projects will be completed by the end of fiscal year 21? And how much of the $17.818 million in budgeted but unspent or unencumbered money will be spent? In addition, is it worth Boulder City's trust in other jurisdictions to screen contractors and automatically add to a list to do these projects on a non-competitive bidding basis? The City Council rejected such a plan at last week's meeting for the City Golf Course maintenance contract when City staff advocated for one unproven contractor only. Regarding Item 2's operations and maintenance budgets, where is the summary for the entire department? The materials in the support package are incredibly convoluted and generally hard to follow, with operating maintenance budgets mixed together with capital budgets and cash flow statements. There are a few explanations for some very enormous increases in budgets from annualized fiscal year 21's actuals to proposed fiscal year 22 amounts. It is also important to know how many full-time equivalent staff are associated with each functional area within utilities, but this information is completely absent, as is the number of vacant positions by functional area that might be filled in fiscal year 22, but were empty for all or part of fiscal year 21. Attention should be given to budget numbers 60,047, 61,044, 61,650, 61,655, 62,670, and 62,041. The numbers for central services are all over the place. The Raftellus rate study shows $994,300 for fiscal year 22. Fiscal year 21 was $1,025,000, table 28. And a previous version of the rate study showed $1.4 million for fiscal year 22. 5 weeks ago, several city staff were assembled to address a number of issues related to budgets, separating operating cash from capital improvement cash, creating one consistent number for each capital project, creating a procedure to formally reauthorize projects from year to year rather than automatically rolling over unused money for multiple years, delaying the closure of a completed capital project, identifying and isolating unused money from closed projects, identifying dropped projects from the earliest spreadsheets of utility capital projects, and documenting which current projects they have gone into, and creating a spot audit process for capital project spending. So far, there has been no reported progress in any of these problem areas. As for the rate study, we have some serious problems, as you talked about at the last meeting. The city budget documents show $3,141,593 of administrative costs for fiscal year 2022. The rate studies table 28 shows $2,080,100 for the same fiscal year 2022. The rate study does not address whether the utility department can actually spend the money being asked for to complete capital projects. Given past years, the capital projects requested won't be done in the years projected. which increases the revenue requirement and hence the rates that must be inappropriately imposed on residents and business owners. The rate studies table 12 shows huge increases from fiscal year 21 to 22 in maintenance and equipment from $966,000 to $1.217 million, and supplies from $285,000 to $405,000, with the alleged justification that it quote, restores funding reduced in 2021 because of COVID. The question to answer here is, what do these numbers specifically represent? Are they truly necessary? And if so, can they actually be spent? The committee should not be revising the rate study. Raftellus is unlikely to do so, but the committee can point out deficiencies in its calculations and assumptions, then recommend that the numbers be adjusted to more accurately reflect reality. And I thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred. We'll give just about 30 seconds in case anybody else wants to call in. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the agenda. So I was saying earlier, we have sort of a tight schedule. Just need to keep things on track. Like I said, we got about 45 to 50 minutes from each subject. If we shorten some, we have a little bit of time for others. But if they all go a little long, we've got to be careful. So why don't we start off with the update of ongoing capital improvement projects, Dennis, and go from there.
Thank you, Chairman. Dennis Porter, Director of Utility Services. Just a couple highlights on the 12/31 dated ongoing capital projects year to date that I'd like to point out. And it's just to kind of sort of respond to a few comments that we just heard, and it goes along with actually the update project status. But if you look at specifically item number E2001 in the electric, that is the BC Tap to Buchanan overhead project. As you know, that revised budget totals to $9,529,442,000 that's shown here. That encumbered to date was essentially the design portion. What you'll see, I believe you'll see in the next month or maybe 2 months, but it will be very soon, is the amendment to that contract would be for the entire encumbrance of the overall project, which would boost that encumbrance significantly closer to $9.5 million. And then just to point out one mistake, we accidentally on the San Felipe Mendota feeder, you'll see a $97,000 encumbrance. That should have been towards the pole replacement program, and so that'll be adjusted on the next report.
I'm sorry, what did you say, full replacement program? I'm sorry, what was that again?
Yeah, the $97,000 that's shown on the year-to-date expended for the San Felipe Mendota was just entered into Munis incorrectly. That $97,000 encumbrance was actually on the pole replacement program.
Oh, the pole replacement, okay.
Where we've actually purchased $90,000 worth of poles that have actually been delivered. So that 97 will move down to the pole replacement program on the next report.
Okay.
And then, of course, additionally, the modifications are made based on the council action that occurred in December with regards to the Arizona Street feeder project, as you can see there with the revised budget of $2.056 million. And with that, I would just certainly answer any questions the committee may have with regards to any of the other items.
Well, and talking about the pole replacement, in the past meetings, you've stated that you've actually done quite a bit of the pole replacements?
Well, there's been some done, and they're now being charged to, so if as an example, where PAR's out doing some of the work on the 4 to 12 kV.
Right.
If one of those poles have been identified based on the work we did during the condition assessment, we'll just have them do the replacement while they're out there and then charge it to this CIP.
Okay, so is that
So
gonna
that's
take
just,
some?
just now starting to happen.
Okay, I guess I thought that would have been done for some months now, so.
Well, as far as the actual charging, in some cases, prior to having this, CIP approved, there was no place for them to charge other than the project they were working on, so. Yeah, now they can, actually charge to this CIP versus the 4 to 12 kV cutover for a pole replacement.
Okay,
But yeah, I mean, over the years, they've had that contract, they have replaced poles. It just wasn't a programmatic approach based on the assessment that had been done as part of the inspection we did just last year. So it was obvious while they were out there, we would meet them out there and go, yeah, this pole needs to go, not just the work on the 4 to 12 kV.
okay.
So.
Was Greg going to say something? I saw you raising. I was going to say something, but I don't want to walk over you.
What I was going to say is because we've got a pole replacement number and it was created back in X, why can't we backdraft the money to come out of the pole replacement program to recover the money for the 4 to 12 kV conversion? So if we've identified a pole that's bad after our voting or after it was added to the budget for the pole replacement program, why can't we move the money back out of the pole replacement program to go back into the 4 to 12 kV conversion and re-bolster that fund? It's still utility money, but it tracks the projects better. We identified the pole problem when we had the audit. We could theoretically justify going from that date forward, and any poles that were replaced as part of the identifier for the mile-high drones, that money should be pulled out of that pole replacement budget and put into the 4 to 12 kV conversion budget. We're mixing apples and oranges, and here we go again.
Well, we aren't now. We may
But
have
I'm
been
saying
then.
we should
I think we can look into that. Certainly, maybe as it relates to what was done in FY21. Anything prior to that, I think is.
No, we have to
sorry.
identify a start date, and what I'm saying is as soon as Mile High Drone's report was published, and we realized the need for pole replacements in addition to what PAR was finding when they were doing the 4 to 12 kV conversion,
Yep.
then any poles that were replaced as part of the 4 to 12 kV conversion that was identified by Mile High Drones, the money has to move from the pole conversion project or replacement project back into the 4 to 12 kV conversion.
Yep.
I just had a question where it says, down there it says prepared by CIP coordinator on January 13th, 2020. That can't be right, I'm guessing. Or
Yeah, it's a year old.
No worries. But then how long do we propose to keep revising the money expended at the end of 2020? Because surely we must know that at the end of 2020, how much we spent.
Well, we're still in the fiscal year.
No, it says as of 12/31/2020. So we must know, are we going to say in July, well, as of 12/31/2020, we had spent this much? Or it seems to me like we should know that, but on that date, how much we've spent. Maybe I'm not making any sense. It doesn't matter.
It's what they're trying to do is they're saying there's still bills outstanding from the year 2020, the fiscal year 2020, okay, rolling into 2021. So that's one of the problems. We're still waiting for some bills to come in on some jobs.
Okay, but if we're talking about fiscal year, wouldn't it make sense to say year to date, meaning January 13th, 2020, because that's what we're really saying if we're talking about fiscal year. We looked at this on January 13th and said, here's how much we'd spend up till then.
Numbers or as of 12/31?
Right, so this will change monthly on the 12/31. What you'll see next month will be 1/31.
Yeah, George, I'm a little, I don't want to speak for Carol, but I guess I'm a little confused because you have, that's one thing we do have, it says year-to-date expended and you have a total amount. So as of, so I guess, unless your question was the time 1/13 compared to 12/31, as of the end of 12/31, this is the amount they're saying that they've expended to date. Is that 2 million, for electrical, for instance, 2,221,000. So am I missing
Okay,
something?
no, it's okay. I don't want to.
Okay. The one thing I was thinking about was, so the new sheet, anybody else have any more comments on this,
Yeah,
sheet?
yeah, just to mention one more, if you see down at the bottom, if you remember when we took the Arizona Street Feeder project to City Council, we utilized the $750,000 in the underground cable replacement, so that's noted at the bottom of the page, just so we're tracking that.
Right, and I guess we're still, so we're tracking it there. So I guess the combination of questions for this report and the next, the new report, which thank you very much, that's very, very helpful. I guess we still, maybe we can talk about it, we have some time to talk today and we might have to go more in detail in another workshop aspect, but trying to get a better understanding of the cost. I think we all are looking at it differently, and so most of these are probably the way you guys are familiar with, but some of them could be helpful as George, where are we at now? So I guess we have the year-to-date expended, that's where we're at. The one thing is on the new form, it would be helpful to have some dollars if it's feasible. It's not feasible. Okay, well, let's talk about that in a minute. Let's finish this and I'll ask that question on that one. So anything else, Dennis?
I just want to make sure you guys got the big 11 by 17s up on the dais as well, so you don't have to stare at the little one, just so everybody hopefully has that, because I know I need that, so.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for getting that for everybody.
And a magnifying glass here if somebody needs to borrow it, but you have to wash it between each use.
Because one thing we was asked, I believe, was trying to, for instance, so you did document the 750 at the bottom, but I think we were sort of looking at a way to try to understand how what money is available, especially at the end of the year. I've asked that in different forms, different times, to sort of get an accounting of the last couple of years, and I still haven't received that. And it's just a matter of what did we have at the end of the year that was used. For instance, so end of 2020. So what money actually went from 2020 to rolled over? So you have the money that went into the projects, and you also have money that the projects were completed, and what that went into available cash. And so if we can sort of track that during the year, it might be helpful too. I don't know how feasible it is, but that's one thing I'm thinking about. So that would be more on the second sheet. But the one thing for this sheet I was wondering about was, is it feasible to have a start date for the project? Or on this sheet or the other sheet? Because we're looking at the other sheet, understanding when it started would be very helpful.
Yeah, it's probably when we talk about, are we on we're kind of on the second sheet?
I think we let's go with that, and we can
and maybe we should talk about the draft that's been put together so far and go, do you mind if we just kind of summarize what we put together and then lead into that a little bit?
That'd be great.
Because there's things that, maybe eventually could be more defined or whatever, but as an example, just to pick one to pick on, let me find one. We may have started on, in fact, we have, let's go to like E2101, which is the San Felipe to Mendota feeder. It says contract, which will eventually be true, but the in-house design has started. So yeah, that project has started from an in-house perspective, and in-house obviously isn't contract for the purposes of this report. Once that design's done, it's going to be it's going to go out to bid and be contracted out. So that's kind of in this report. That's how we're defining contract, which is the majority of what we do, because eventually we bid everything out, even though we may have a consultant doing the design, or we may be doing the design in-house, because we really haven't split and gotten to the details of what, who's doing design. Is that in-house? Is that a professional services contract? Then, once we bid it out, it's obviously contract. So I guess eventually we could get to that level of detail, but for this report right now, it's just that simple.
Well, maybe, but I'm sorry to interrupt. The one aspect, make sure I don't forget, but if we state when the actual construction starts, that's still helpful.
Yes, that we could do.
Okay,
I mean, we can certainly have a notice to proceed date for all the contracts. I mean, they all officially get an MTP, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay, so you want me to add a column that says start date for construction?
So whatever is the best terminology that we can understand, but also fits what makes sense into your department. We don't want to make something totally brand new.
I want to
that
do
is certainly-
whatever you guys want
Well,
on that column.
that is certainly the most official date, start date, right? Because when we bid out a project for construction, they officially get a letter with a notice to proceed date, and then they have their 365 days or 180 days or whatever the construction schedule is that they have to abide by.
But that's what
Yeah,
that's
so
what I was
notice
used
to
to.
proceed
So.
is very easy, and it's official. And we can add that that's not a problem.
So we just say start, construction start date, and that might, it won't include the design, but it consumes when actually it was, people were started the project.
Right.
I think it'd be
Okay.
useful to know when we start spending the money, because, you can, from a budget perspective, it's not, that's the beginning of the project when you start spending money, right?
Okay, so that makes it different. So you're saying design, you start spending money, you're saying.
Well, give us both, maybe, then.
Construction.
Well, that's the problem is what I heard is saying is that we can do the construction easily, the design is not something easily done. Is that what I understood?
It's just the difference between in-house, which we probably don't track as close as a consultant we're paying. It doesn't mean we can't. I don't know that we are.
Go ahead, Craig.
So,
I disagree with the design start date, because you can shelve a project for 5 years. It's when the money is spent to the outside, a construction start date is a notice to proceed. Design is 100% done, or it's a design build, and when shovels go in the ground, that's when we need the date to start.
Yep. And then the other thing just to acknowledge is you may have an NTP on a large project, but you may not see a large expenditure because of lead time on equipment. So you may be seeing upfront mobilization, and you may not see a large expenditure for 4 months. And then the BC tap to Buchanan's a perfect example of, they went out, they got the design done. They'll be able to start drilling foundations, which they are, but the real big chunk of money doesn't really come till that stuff gets delivered, and we're paying them for the poles and the cable, and then even then the labor doesn't really start for 6 months. So, but yes, George, we can do that.
I'm sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, no, so far I have one column I'm gonna add.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dennis.
And we'll just call it construction notice to proceed.
Okay.
And frankly, we can even, add a second column that says, it's a 180-day completion or whatever's in the contract.
That would be helpful, because that's then we would understand, what is anticipated to be done.
Right. And it certainly gives you an ability to say, you know, we've given this contractor a year to get it done. How come they're, you know, 3 months behind? Or
Can I do that as one column, though? Can I just put the date
probably.
and the,
Yep.
so if I put the notice to proceed date and whatever the terms are, can it be one column, or do you want it as two columns?
If it works for you, a lot of times the date and the time and the amount of time is different, so it depends on what you're trying to search, but if it works for you.
Well,
you know, we're
this
gonna-
I'll have to do manually, so if it's just a matter if you want one column or two.
I'm okay with one. Does anybody have any problem? I'm okay with one. I don't see an issue. Okay.
One is better, then it gives you more room to add more columns
Yeah,
later.
right.
So-
Okay.
That's what we want to do, 11 by 17 sheet?
So I realize, I think Carol, I'm gonna speak for her real fast, I think she's specifically looking for this kind of feedback from the committee, because this is the first time you've seen this report, so don't be shy. Certainly, you can take more time to look at it over the next month, and we can make the modifications per the discussion we already had. And even with regards today, you know, we put some little status notes off to the right, and just to give you a simple idea of where they are.
So for laymen, we know, with this new information, we'll be able to know when the project is going to start and when we think it's going to end, right? Is that what you're going to provide us with?
And that's correct.
Okay, that's what the mayor was asking about it when we presented our report. You know, is it reasonable to finish this in the time allocated? So that's useful,
Right.
yeah.
And that's probably a two-part conversation, because this doesn't, you know, we would have to have the additional conversation on how we get the projects started and through the design process, because if anything, that's where there's a little bit of a backlog. You know, because once you go to construction, they're off and running. But the fact of the matter is, we're resource challenged on getting the design, the footwork, the design work out the door. And we can talk about that when we talk about the O&M budget, if you want to leave it for that, because there is a plan that we have.
Either that, or we can do it at another O&M workshop to go into major detail. Depends how much time we have today. Eileen, I guess Eileen doesn't have a mic.
But we've heard that, as George said, we've heard it from Mayor and Council, we've heard it from outside sources, and this committee has asked those same questions. And
According to my notes on this sheet, someone also asked for the project priority to be listed on there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't have that in my notes, so I apologize, but where's that gonna come from? From the CIP or from, I just need instruction.
On the,
Well, we can put that in our report too. That's one of the things I wanted to deal with, the 5-year CIP report. We can prioritize these projects because things have to happen in a certain order. So that can go there. So this lady, sorry, I forgot your name, but anyway, you don't have to do that, yeah.
I can go back on the minutes, but I know someone specifically asked to have the priority, and on
Well, the
those-
mayor asked, yeah.
on the sheets that show the projects, the
The
project
CIP,
sheets, they have a priority number on them, don't they?
they do, but that's based on the CIP, so that's when it's starting. That's what my question was, is I can do it off of those CIP sheets, but that may be different than, so I just need direction. If I take it off of the CIP sheet, then it's gonna be based on what is.
right, and I guess in my mind, and maybe you guys need to straighten me out, the way we've laid out the 5-year CIP is the priority.
Not numerically. We have a 5-year report that's a rough draft that we want to discuss later on.
Yep.
The problem is contingent. Some projects and some items can be done complete 100% and sit there. Others have to be done sequentially. Now, what we're trying to do is get our head around what the priority is, not what the urgency is, which is what the number is on the nice color brochures in the books that show these different numbers, as into, it's based upon several factors, failure rate, okay, longevity, and a bunch of other stuff. Basically what we're dealing with is on the electrical side of the house is the fact that there's some projects that are key to having to be complete and energized before we can fundamentally start taking stuff apart to go to the next step. Now, to give you a date that it's going to be completed, that is physically impossible because there has not been any shovels turned into the ground. We can give you a sequentially of what we got to do before, we got to do project 1 before we can go to 1A. We got to do project 2 before we can go to 3. But the problem is that's a living document, okay? Because as soon as something trips or goes off and is done, then all the sequence changes again, okay? We can discuss that as to assign a project number, which is already on the sheet, and say this one has to be done either 90% or 100% complete before we can go down to this project number. But to take and list them sequentially, it's like, for example, I heard through the grapevine that at a council meeting, they requested that the Utility Advisory Committee go through the drawings that are being submitted for production and construction. That's a tall task, okay? And for us, and I know 2 people in particular, they're gonna be pulling what little hair they got left in their heads out when we go through and review them and say, hey, what about this? You're missing this. An example that bothers me is the Boulder City tap to the Buchanan line going down Adams. I've driven that line for 20 years. Okay, you know what scares me the most? Is we now have a federal mandate that the poles be increased in height and the cables from the hospital are not long enough to go to the next section up. So now did somebody put a vault in or a handhold at the bottom of the pole to be able to connect this underground cable to the new taller pole tap? I don't know. I haven't seen any drawings. I haven't seen any marks on the ground either. We come up to something like that, as basic as that, and all of a sudden they're gonna go, oh, there's a field change. Okay, because now we gotta put a handhold at the base of the pole to receive this 12 kV cable coming from the hospital to go up to the new pole. I haven't seen those details. And I heard at the council meeting, I caught the tail end of it, so I don't know if it was a truism or not, but the mayor's requested that the Utility Advisory Committee look at the drawings before they're produced for construction.
Okay, but to get back to my point, this is the year-to-date project sheet. And someone had asked, and I can't remember who, that the priority codes be put on there. Simply take the priority codes off the sheets and put them on there. As you said, it's a living document, so those can be changed.
Yeah, those codes were from 2 years ago, so they all had to be revisited.
Well,
Before we
that's
do
something
it.
that could be done over time, but just get it
Yeah.
in there for now and then work with
Yeah,
it later. but-
it's definitely a crazy thing that we've been tasked to do, and we can do it. I mean, I can do it, but the problem is I've got to convince the better half that I'm going to do it.
Well, what I'm hearing, we have at least 3 priority dates. Theoretically, we would have a priority date when it was budgeted. What was the priority of that project when it was budgeted? Hopefully somebody had an idea. So the priority 1 is, I don't know if we're going through 1 through 3, 1 through 5. And on a list like this, that would be very helpful, because if you had a priority of 1 through 5, let's say, 1 being one thing that you want to get done as soon as possible, and 5 being, okay, well, we need to get it done, but it's not as critical. Now then, we're 3 years down the line on some of these, and if we saw that it was a 5, it makes a little more sense. If we see it's a 1, we can sort of help push it along to say, okay, this is a 1 priority. How come we're 5 years into it, or 3 years or so into it, and we haven't seen any major part sheet? If it's just that, okay, it's going to start on this date apart, that doesn't necessarily help us. And then we also have it that if we had it budgeted at a certain priority and we've revised it, then I guess it would be a living document that we could just change. It was originally a 4 maybe, and now it's a 2 or 3 or something, different like
When
that.
the CIP is done each year and we bring it forward, the priorities are changed. The priority coding and structure is in the CIP report under introduction. So so when I go in and redo the sheets every year, then the code can change, because then it's going to move. So that's what I guess I need direction is, do you want it from the most recent CIP document? Or do you want it back from when it showed up on the CIP 5 years ago? I don't know if doing these are really going to tell you what the priority is, because I think more what they're talking about, and I apologize for how I said that, but more in saying right now this is our priority in order to move through these projects. So I have no problem but doing it the way it's spelled out and what's on the sheets, just with the understanding that I'm going to do the most recent version and understanding that it's going to change. So it's not going to be the same priority code it was when it first showed up on this sheet, when I said this project first showed up on the CIP in 2019. Then it was on 20, then it was on 21. I just need direction on exactly what priority code and where I'm getting it from.
You know, I'm thinking that maybe these priorities are something that staff would be in a better position to determine and maybe make a recommendation or maybe pass it on to us at that point. But it's going to be tough for us not knowing all the details that staff is going to be working with every day. So I think that we ought to at least maybe take a look at that as well, have the staff do that.
I mean, I have no problem adding the column. I think we just need to know, like if it's coming from staff, like the physical completion percentage comes from staff, or is it coming from a different place? That's all. I do agree that it should go on there.
Well, let's put it on there for right now, because this is a living document, and we can do it. So I think to answer the first question is that in the future, if there is a budgeted priority, then if it changes, we have the old document to go back to understand that. So I would say we try to get the most current priority list on there. But I guess what I'm hearing everybody, and I think is the best thing is, so Dennis, can it be one or does it have to be two? We've got one that is what's the priority for the system, if I understand correctly, okay? What's gonna fall down, what's the risk factor or something like that? Right. So that becomes a priority one. And it also, isn't that the same thing that to get that done, we want that, a lot of times that needs to be done before something else to be done, so it's still a priority one.
Right. So and I've actually seen this a number of different ways. I've seen it done where there is no priority. The CIP is the priority. So, you know, this 5-year plan, that's the priority. That's been laid out. That's the expectation, is that those are the higher priority projects are in 22, that, you know, and it follows that sequence based on staff's review with the condition assessments and other work that's been done either in-house or externally by consultants. I've also seen where agencies have taken an approach where they categorize, and this is something we wouldn't be ready to do anytime soon, but there's actually a scoring system that has 1 to 10 for public health, 1 to 10 for public safety, 1 to 10 because it's a regulatory mandate, 1 to 10 because it's aging infrastructure. You know, the consequence of failure is high, and then you total those points up based on, you know, basically the experience of staff, and the highest number wins. The highest number is the highest priority. That's a CIP prioritization strategy that I've seen used in some different agencies that obviously is a little more detailed and complex than what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I think to cut, I got to cut short, sorry.
Yeah.
But I think what we're looking for here is there is two things. If it can be combined, that would be great. If it doesn't, then maybe we need, I hate to have it, but if we need 2 columns or have it in 1 column and try to show it, but we need when it has to be done and what the priority is. So if like I said, so if we had, let's say, I don't know, what are we looking 1 through 3 or 1 through, what is the priorities now, Dennis?
Oh, shoot, I don't have those sheets in front of me. Mine says it's
Are you talking about the
project
CIP?
sheets. Yeah.
Okay, so, and that's where I'm getting a little bit confused. In the
That's, I think, the
CIP book
question you're asking, right? Is in the CIP book, what's the?
Okay, now I guess what I'm trying to, okay.
is
So I
1
don't-
through 4,
Okay, so,
and it's very specific on how they're done.
but is it the date, or is it that this is a priority because the system's gonna, so number one, the system's gonna, we're gonna have a failure if we don't do number one. That's what I'm sort of used to, something like that.
This is what's in this, and it goes all the way to 1 through 4.
Okay, so this, if I'm reading this at a quick glance, this is just saying that your first priority is funded for year 1, and then funded for years 2 and 3. Yeah, I don't think this is, at a quick glance, this doesn't look like what we're asking for. Part of it is they
Right,
don't,
that's what those numbers is what I gave him. So the numbers on the CIP sheet are based on that criteria.
so I think what Ned is saying is that if we can get staff, if Dennis or somebody can say, so I think the two most important things to this staff, and it sounds like council off also, so make sure if I'm saying it right, is that what is the importance to the system, and what is the importance to how it's the schedule? So if that's one number, that's great. If it's two numbers, I think we do need we need somewhere to define that. So this I don't think necessarily helps us. So I think Ned's got it. It's going to have to come something from staff. So to sort of say what we're currently doing, and it could change, and that's fine. We just go back to the old one and we understand, but we understand how it is important to the system and how important to the schedule it is. Does that?
Well, and why don't we, as a staff, take a stab at it for revision to the next report? I think we can show the current priority as it was indicated in the CIP. I think if the need is immediate, we can just note that in a column that says it's an immediate need. And there may be a number of those, but the flip side of that is, and I'll give you an example, is the replace 8-inch butterflies. You know, that's a little more subjective. They've been there for a long time. They're aging. It's aging infrastructure. It's the wrong application. But it's been that way for a long time. So is it immediate? Probably not. Is it important to get accomplished in the upcoming future? Yeah. So I wouldn't call it immediate, but I would certainly say it's a program you need to start on, which is the way it's laid out here.
Well, maybe it's, if we're going to do something that's sort of different, maybe we do 1 through 5, for instance, and you have 2 and 3 are important, but not necessarily as important as number 1, and you've got something that's number 5 that is eventually has to be done, but if it doesn't happen in a little bit of time, it's not a big deal, or maybe that's number 4. So it sounds like it's a little different than currently is done, but it gives us an idea of where it fits in the schedule and how important it is to the system. I think that's what I'm looking. Hopefully, I think that's what most are looking for. I'm getting a few nods.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, based on those nods, is we'll take a stab at that and give you guys an opportunity to review that and make comments in the next meeting. That works.
So I'm going to list it as a priority column, but it's not going to be the CIP ones. It's going to be based on staff input.
That's what we
Okay.
appreciate.
And I promise I won't say that every one of them are immediate. Maybe half.
No, we know that because there again, it should have both. It should have immediate and it has a schedule, so they all can't be one because you're not going to get them all done in that time frame.
Right. And this is, I think, it makes some sense because some of these projects, as has been duly noted, have been on the capital plan for a long time, but they haven't been done.
Correct.
And that's probably for a myriad of different reasons. Was there sufficient revenue available? Was it dependent on rate increases? All those things that may or may not be true, but at least now we can, track that.
One other possibility might be to have like A, B, C, D for critical. A is critical, D is not so critical, but then you still have your numbers. This needs to be in sequence. So that sometimes something is maybe important, but it's not that important. So it could be a D or something like that. So I'm just throwing that out there.
That sounds good. I guess, so some of this thing is if we can just call it a living document and just keep revisiting it, and then, like I said, we might have to do a workshop that we can spend more time on it, because I think as we review it, we see things that are helpful, and then we just have to find out how feasible it is to get it done. And then by working this, we also understand how these projects are moving forward.
Right. And to, I guess, put a little bit of a ribbon around it before we complete the discussion is if you remember from the consultant's presentation, at least with regards to water and sewer, they did lay out the projects based on the immediacy, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and that's how these water and sewer projects were laid out based on their recommendations. Because, a good example would be, which I'm trying to see here and I don't see, is the effluent, the redundant chlorine contact basin. There is a current chlorine contact chamber that has some significant issues. We have it in the FY, at the time of the study, it was 1 to 3 years, but you could argue that could be pushed out. It's not going to immediately lead to a violation of the Clean Water Act. I don't, we clearly meet the chlorine contact times in the current basin, but that existing basin, it has some challenges in it,
Yeah, I think
if you remember right, the cost to rehabilitate it it's cheaper just to build a new one and keep the old one as a standby. So that's kind of how that got laid out. But I would argue it's not immediate, like some of these other ones. So it could be a 2 or whatever.
Right, but I think Ned's thing with the A, B, and C will help too, because then you can say it's a 2D, or maybe it's a 2C or 2B even.
Okay.
It needs to be done, but we've got a little bit of time frame, and maybe that gives us the priority in the system and also the priority of how fast it's, so what you're saying is here, see the problem with just saying that the SIP 5-year covers us, well, that we've got 2 separate things going on. We have the ongoing and we have the SIP. So once we roll the ongoing, once we roll these 5 years into this SIP, that we still need a priority to follow that. Mm-hmm. So saying that, because you'd assume that this would be, if I'm your original logic was that 22 was priority 1, 23 was priority 2, 24 was priority 3, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that's doesn't necessarily work 100% unless
no, it's still subjective, and I think it always will be at some level.
But if we start, like I said, so either we go 1A, but let's start with a 1 and maybe a alphabetic type aspect. Let's for the next meeting, and then see how it fits and how we understand it. That might be a good way to start, and then we can continue on with okay, how what's the complications?
And I guess what we got going for us in this regard is we actually have studies that have been done to define these projects that put them in some level of immediacy that we haven't had before. So at least from a package perspective of a 5-year plan, at least it's based on, facts and data and information that's been provided by consultants and condition assessments, and instead of placeholders or we think we're going to have to do this, but we don't know for sure. These projects are now, for the most part, fully defined, and we know at some point in time they need to be done. It may not be exactly within this 5-year time frame, but it's defined, where historically I'm not sure that's been the case.
Well, I think, but so by having it being a living document, we can say, okay, we understand why things have been changed. We have the old documents to go back to say, okay, this is what originally started, but we're currently here. So we still have some information to understand that. So I don't have a problem with it changing, and the reports changing. If that's one thing I was hearing that was concerned, well, they might always stay that way. That's understandable.
Yep. And it's just like you said, we'll find, there's something else will come up in the next 18 months that will change. You know, it just will.
Yeah, I guess, but the thing is, let's
Yeah.
say that if we do the alphabet, you know, we do the 1A, then theoretically, we want that to be done. And if it's 3 years later and the 1A hasn't been done, we're out, we could be at, why hasn't that been done?
Yep, and I think that's reasonable.
That's the
Yep.
type of thing.
Yep.
So, okay. Is finance going to do the next presentation, or is that
Which is the next presentation?
the O&M? Because if finance isn't here, I don't think that's gonna take 50 minutes, so we have a little extra time.
If you know, we can certainly have them here in the future. I had not planned for them to be here for the O&M budget.
Okay.
So if there's questions specifically, probably the easiest way to do that is, we can take those questions, get them to finance, or just respond by email or at the next meeting.
Okay, but are they gonna be here for the regular meeting?
I do not think so.
Because that report, I'd be interested, there's a lot of questions I think we have on that, and I doubt you can answer them.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll discuss that. I don't think our anticipation today was necessarily for them to be here, primarily because you guys just got it. I think the idea was, here it is, let's get feedback from the committee and be able to have finance respond accordingly.
Okay, so
Versus
let's
them trying to
let's
do
go to
it
that agenda item,
Yep,
but
yep.
I just wanted, if the finance wasn't here, we're not gonna take 50 minutes. So we have a little more time on this project.
Yep.
So just make sure that, so Dennis, was there any, or Carol, was there anything else on this document you wanted to explain?
No, on the CIP project code, the second column, when it says, no number FY19, that means that in fiscal year 19, the CIP did not have a number next to the project.
It was just a project. Okay.
So I did want to explain why that said that.
Okay, well, thank you.
But that's not really an explanation, that's a statement. I mean, why didn't it have a number?
This is exactly what the CIP was.
Right, but why didn't they put numbers? Did they,
I didn't prepare this.
It was BC, before Carol.
Yeah.
oh, BN before Noyola? Or?
So yes, we've got the munis number and the code, that's, so when we have both of them, you've given us what you have, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
And then we've got the information. Now, I don't want to, since we have a little bit of time, I'm trying not to get too picky about it, but it is a little confusing. So this gives us new data. So for instance, you have E1901, which is the feeder 61 substation 3. And then you're saying when that money is expended, the Claremont conversion E2010 has extra money that can be used there. That's what I'm reading between the lines, if I'm reading it correctly. We haven't heard that before, so are those two connected, or are we just saying there's extra money that, and this other one, since it's only 35% done, we're knowing that there's not enough money for it? Is that what we're saying on that document?
Those do connect, right? Dennis?
Yes, those two are connected. So, and the way they were defined from a budget perspective wasn't entirely clear, but they are integrally tied to each other. So the total of those two projects, we're hopeful will have
Okay.
adequate funds available.
So, yeah, I guess, because what we're trying to do is there's times we've talked in detail about it and times we haven't, and I guess we're getting to the point where we want a little more detail to understand the project.
Yeah, and some of these older ones, so we're kind of getting away from that. It appears to me that historically there's been projects that have been phased differently than I would do it. I would have just made it one project. They were kind of split up and divided at a certain point that was hard to define where that project ended and where the next one started. And this is an example of that.
Okay.
Where had I done it the way I think it should have been, it would have just been one project.
Okay.
And then a perfect example of that is the Claremont project, which we've had conversations on, where it's more than one phase. In my mind, it should have just been one project.
But that's done according to this, so
Yes,
Claremont is
yes.
done.
It's just a good example of I wouldn't have phased it that way had it been me that was making the recommendation to move forward that project. It would have just been one project.
Okay.
When you phase those, it presents some different challenges that would be better off you just get it done at one time. Yeah, obviously, project's going to cost more, probably cost less in the long run, but it costs more to make it one project. But
So, Carol,
so hopefully we won't see a lot more of those.
Okay, okay.
They should be defined as one project. It may be, instead of being two $400,000 projects, it may be one, $1 million project or whatever. But yeah.
So Carol, you were saying that it wasn't feasible to add the dollars to this column. Did I misunderstand?
We had the conversation that the report that's provided out of Munis with the dollars, you're already getting on this report. So this is your finance report. This second document we agreed at the last meeting was going to be where it's a physical complete. This is not, because when you start putting numbers on here and here, everything has to tie back together, and you're going to repeat the same numbers. So that's what was talked about at the last meeting, was that that's not the purpose of this one. This one is to say, this is where the construction physically is to this date. A status report.
Right.
So when you start adding, so these are the numbers are on the city manager's report that's given to the council that ties back. The CIP report's given to the council that ties back to the city manager's report.
Okay, so is it too late, or can we get a closeout of last year's construction? What was closed out, so what it cost that project and what money was rolled over? We've asked for that, and so now we're into 21, so it'd be seeing fiscal year 20, how did it close out, what projects were actually completed, and what was the money related to it. Then I don't have to have it on, I can just know, okay, at the end of the year, I'm gonna understand how much the project was spent, so then I could find the budgetary issue and other things. I'd have how much it was budgeted for. I have this sheet that says how it was revised. Then on another sheet, we have the closeout, so how much was actually spent on the project, and then what was carried forward.
Okay, so
if any money was left over.
On the July 1st through the first month, we put what projects rolled over. So are you looking for a project per project report, or
Yeah, I guess
what?
I'm looking for a sheet, probably like this ongoing sheet, that says, because I don't think I've found anywhere that says what projects were completed and exactly how, well, see, I guess in the city manager's report, it says how much construction, how much capital project, how much money was spent, but it doesn't tell me what projects were completed. And I don't think there's any document that shows past projects that were exactly completed.
So Carol, we send to council a final project closeout
Correct, but
item.
so when we close a project out, we take it to council and we get the closing approved, but that's per
not-
project.
Yeah,
That's not a
it's on a
report like
case-by-case.
this that's gonna say, so,
I'm looking at a document you prepared, says Boulder City Utility Fund Capital Projects year to date. That available budget number in the end column and the encumbrances and the year-to-date expended will change every time that this document is presented to us.
correct.
So we don't need anything else, it's here.
No, but we don't have but when a document is closed out, it's taken off the sheet.
But that's in the council report, and that's a different document that'll come under the Munis numbers.
Well, I guess if we could see that, then maybe that would, I don't think if you've seen
So-
that document, I don't think I've seen that in the city manager report.
Well, this draft here is a Munis, got the Munis project numbers at the front end of it, and it gives you a history of what's going on, whether it's ongoing, how much is percent completed, and everything. So you just gotta lay these two sheets side by side, and if we get this column in this capital projects year to date, where we got the munis number, and then we got our CIP numbers in here, like we're talking about, then we can follow this through.
Are you talking about the current ones we're looking at now, or is there
Right
another?
now, right now,
Yeah, but
yeah.
no, at the end of this year, we won't, well, I don't know what projects were completed in 2020. Where is that shows me that the projects for 2020 completed? So I think for electrical, for instance, electrical, I think it might have been like $4 million. I'm not positive, but I think it was like $4 million. What made up that $4 million? Where is that shows me the projects that were completed in 20 and how much it cost that, and what money was left over, if any money was left over? That doesn't show it because it gets dropped off on this amount. So we have encumbrance, we have year to expend, we have available money, but we don't, when a project gets closed out and it's dropped, we don't know exactly what money that had to be used for closeout, what money was actually put to cash.
Okay, so this is what we agreed on, correct? Was to move, when I close a project, to move it down.
Okay, so that's gonna stay there.
That's gonna stay there,
Okay.
and that column's gonna grow every month.
Okay, so if we close it out, then that's gonna, so let me see, so you got that
But if
money
you're
moved.
looking for a report to go back and do every project from 20 and how it closed out and where it ended up, I think what would make more sense is when we close that project at council,
Right.
there's a full, it says everything. So if that's what you're looking for, is to go back and look at every project that went to council to be closed in 20, is that?
Well, do you have at least a report, one or two reports that you've sent to council that we can see that next time you can bring to us so I can understand?
I don't think they go as a report, they go as project by project, so,
It's a full agenda item when we close a project.
per each project.
So,
Well, what's in the packet for that agenda?
It's basically an agenda item for that project closeout with that backup staff report.
Well,
correct.
maybe that's what you're looking for, right?
Well, I guess, but, so if it's already done, can we go forward? So, can we bring one from the last one?
As they get prepared to go to council, they can be sent out to the committee.
Yeah, is that too, because if it's
No.
already,
That's,
Yeah.
if that's feasible, that would be great.
That's something that, now there's, oftentimes, and it's like we've discussed before, oftentimes there's a delay, if it's like the BC Parkway as an example, because there's this paperwork that takes 3-4 months after the project is physically completed, before it goes to city council, so.
Is there any chance that the very last one could be sent to us, or is that still too much, just?
The very last one, well, I think we just had one, I can't remember what it was, though. I don't know if it was a utility project.
I can go back through all the council minutes but I'm not gonna commit right now. I'm in the middle of CIP.
Okay, well then, it's
So-
just, let's do the next one, but, it's confusing to understand what's been actually completed, because we've got it from last year, so maybe if I can compare the two, but I still don't, so I guess this bottom part's a good step, I think we're still missing. At least
Yeah,
maybe I'm missing something myself, but.
I think from a project that's gone to construction, there's all those things that have to be done at the end of the project with regards to prevailing wage, evaluations that are ongoing or at the end. There's, all the liens gotta be released, all those things that take a little bit of time after the project's actually done, so. But yes, they all, as far as I know, they all go to council, so it's not a problem to get those same staff reports. to
Okay, so I
this
guess
committee.
if you, because are we gonna get one probably in the near future to the,
Honestly, right now, our main priority is to get the CIP through the budget process, the CIP process. I can make the adjustments to this new report. As far as being able to give you go back through and give you each project that's been done, I can do it. I'm just not gonna commit that it can be done in a short time frame.
Well, I can tell you, it's been fairly recent, I don't know if that means 2 months or 6 months, that we took the final completion for the BC, for the 69 kV loop to council. That's closed out, that's done.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I guess, because I agree, the important thing is to go forward. That's the important thing, I totally agree. And getting things moved forward is what we want to get done.
And that was the agreement, was that from now moving forward, that anytime something closes out, it'll move to the bottom of the report because it doesn't come off of the Munis report until the year is closed. So you guys wanted to see them move down, so I will move them down and it'll stay in that closed, like this first one, closed for 21.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was going to stay there or not, so that
No,
helps.
it's gonna stay there.
I appreciate that.
And I'll go and get with Shannon and pull up from the prior council meetings, but I don't want to commit that I can get it to you in the next few days.
No, that's not a problem. It's even next meeting would be all, so, but I understand, the priority is going forward, so I understand that. We're just trying to get a handle of some of the past years, and even if we say, okay, we understand what happens at the end of this year, so in June of, somewhere in the end, after July, so we understand August, September, we understand what's going on. So if things are going to council, that might help us. I did not realize that, so.
So are there any other changes besides the 2 new columns?
Well, Marty,
this
did you have
sheet?
a comment? Okay, I saw you reaching for it.
No, I just wasn't quite sure what you were asking for, because on this report for the 6 months of 2021, ending 12/31, that's all the projects that have been worked on this year. And what I'm hearing you ask for is because projects are presented to council one project at a time, correct? Yes. So, I mean, are you asking for several years of projects that were completed and reported to the city council when they were completed?
Not anymore, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
I'm just trying to figure out what we can, I would like to have got some history, but it doesn't sound feasible, so I'd like to go forward. So maybe as we do this, we can sort of start ironing out, if everything's not on there, then maybe we can figure that out as we go.
Well, I mean, these are public documents, so we can do it ourselves if you're too busy. There's nothing that stops us going back in the thing and finding these documents. So what are they're referred to by the Munis number in the council agendas, or by what?
No, when it goes to council, it gets actually an agenda item. So I'll go back and at least meet with them and at least get the ones that, Dennis, you're talking about that we know were in the last couple of months. And then that way you can see, or you can just go back to each, if you want to do it yourself.
But how are they referred to is my question. I said, would it say E2105 on the agenda?
No, it would have the description of the project.
So it would say pole replacement program, for example?
Yeah, or it would say the one that we did, it'll have,
It'll use the account description?
yes, exactly. What was the one you were just talking about?
Complicated even more, like the BC Parkway probably has an RTC number that's not the same as anything we use, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so in other words, the 2 operating ones for water and wastewater that were part of the parkway, it'll be part of the full parkway closure.
Package, yep.
So
But
it
it'll
won't
say
be,
closure in the agenda, right? It'll say closure of this project.
I believe it's called a final project closeout, but
Okay, so we can look it up ourselves.
we could, let's just, this week or tomorrow, we could just find one and send it to the group and say, here's what they are, here's what they look like, this is what we can do going forward as they come up, and if we can dig up some of the historical ones, we'll do that too. I don't know why we couldn't.
Yeah, just one, and if it takes longer, that, I understand. I understand some of this dialogue, so I'm just making sure what I'm asking for is reasonable, so please, let's make sure we're on agreement that I'm not asking for anything that's gonna take too much of your time or two, so I don't want to stop today and say, okay, I've got this big backlog.
I don't mind the time. I just want to make sure that, that I'm very clear on what process is taking place right now.
No, and I appreciate that. That's what I meant, because what I was trying to get across last time was that this would sort of be a work, let's see what we get and then try to work with it. And that's what so
as of right now, I'm adding 2 columns. Is there anything else before the next time?
And I'm gonna complicate this a little more, just for fun. I'm not exactly sure as an example, in E2012 or S2102, which is the equipment forklift and the sewage lift station mobile emergency pump, they're CIP projects, but it's purchase of a piece of equipment, and I don't know that we do final project closeouts that go to city council on those. So those, there may be some one-offs that we can report on, but I'm not sure those actually go to council for project closure. I have to dig into that. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's a good example. You've got, so you've got the, let me see, make sure, E2009 capital equipment purchase. It's saying 85%, so is it a purchase of something like, well, we've got the forklift, so that's separate. Is it a vehicle? What is that? It doesn't even say what it's purchasing.
Right, and it's been more than one piece of equipment in that capital item, so those ones are different, there's no doubt. Another example is the evaluation of the Hemingway Valley Sewer. Well, that's essentially our backbone sewer model. Yeah, it's more of a professional service than it is a contract, so.
Yeah, I think in the future, if we just sort of look at a workshop that we can maybe take more time and everybody understands that it's gonna be a little more time on trying to understand maybe most of the items. Go ahead, Greg.
And I don't know if there's been any consistency historically on where we've categorized studies that have been necessary, whether they've put into capital or put into the operating budget. The example I can give you right offhand is the condition assessment work that we did for the water and sewer, and that we did for the pole and cable assessment were put into the operating budgets as studies. These projects specifically have been identified as CIP projects, but one of them's equipment replacement and the other one's a study, so there are some differences. The majority of these absolutely are construction, but there's some one-offs, as we just discussed. So
Yeah, I think we're getting a better handle of it, just be trying to find a way that we can all understand it better.
Right, and I'm just saying, I don't think those go back to council for closeout. They just get closed out once the equipment's been purchased or the professional service has been completed.
Okay.
But when that happens, like when the forklift is purchased, then it'll move to the bottom and there'll be a note on here saying that that it's been closed.
Okay, so on the forklift, okay, so right now we have $86,000 that's available. It says available budget, so I'm assuming that's available to the budget from that item.
Correct.
And so, but that's not necessarily the final number because it depends if there's any more closeout. Is there a number that goes with the closeout that says this is the number that's available, or this even the cost? Because I guess we can do our own arithmetic if we know.
The encumbrance, on when the forklift was ordered and the encumbrance was placed, that's what the contract says. Once it's actually received and the encumbrance, the PO is liquidated, then the final number will go to year-to-date expended, and the difference will be the available budget, which they're not planning on using. So then I'll show it close out to the bottom.
And so that'll be on the bottom then?
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate it. That's what, okay. So it looks like that bottom's gonna be most of what we need then.
Correct,
I didn't
moving
understand
forward.
this. With one line items, I didn't quite realize what was going, so appreciate it. Greg? Okay.
I had another question. So where'd you get those data from, like the previous agendas for the city council, say for 2019 or 2020?
Okay.
It's in the agenda packet.
No, I understand that.
It ranges anywhere between 300 to 900 pages.
No, I understand all that, but how do you access the agenda packet for, say, 2019?
It's handed out every 2 weeks after a city council agenda is put on, then the packet.
No,
I think you're asking historically how to do that.
Yeah, if we wanted to get this.
Yeah, you should be able to go on to the city website,
Yeah.
go to you can go to the city council agendas and you should.
Well, I'm on there right now, and it says can't open the page, the repository, because one of the things is we can get these documents ourselves, but if the public access is blocked, we can't do it.
You have to go, it looks like they took everything from last year and they moved it, and you have to go to the city clerk section and go through that way, and I can show you that later.
You know how to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I want to know. I won't take up more time.
And I know I sound like a broken record, but I just want to know if I'm adding more than two. And what did we decide on how often I'm doing this report?
Okay, so we're doing
Two
two columns.
columns.
One column has two data, points of data on it.
One column is the start date, which is based on construction notice to proceed and the terms for completion. That's one column. The second column is a priority column, which Dennis will give me, and it's gonna show priority based on staff input, because I want to make sure it doesn't link back to the CIP priority.
No.
And that information I'll get from Dennis. So far I have those two. Are there any other changes, because this is a document and then the other thing is when at first we talked about it was going to be every other month. I just need to know what we're going to do.
What's the feasibility to get it to us? What's feasible?
Dennis?
You're the one that's doing the work. My sense is because the world doesn't change that fast, monthly is probably not going to give you as much information as you might think. So every other month is probably sufficient.
The only thing is I guess if we do something in March, would it be feasible to have at least those new columns on there so we can see something in March? Is that feasible or is that not? Just to see it with the new columns so we can understand get more information.
And I'm really looking at Carol because she's got her plate pretty full with.
No, that's what I'm asking.
So.
I'm trying to be realistic.
And I am too.
March isn't, then
I don't want to put any
April.
undue pressure on her.
So when is,
Our next meeting would be the first meeting in March. So.
Okay, and because the documents have to be done before the meeting.
Right.
So I just need that date, and we'll do that meeting.
The first Thursday.
Okay, we can go. That's fine. If it's April's, let's do it. Have it ready for April.
We have a pretty full plate in this meeting and next month. I think we need to do it in April.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so
Okay.
I appreciate you asking. And so, do you have the information you need? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to make sure that I'm changing what needs to be changed, because when we talked about this in the first place, we said we would tweak it at each time and make sure that we add what we need to add. So this document will change as we go, because we may find that we're not using columns as much as we thought we were, and we may find we need other columns, and we may find that we need two 11 by 17 sheets. So we'll just adjust as we go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
Larry, did somebody ask for it to show the projected completion date?
I think that may be in that first column if we do the terms. Would that
Yep.
cover that date?
That'll cover that. So let's start looking at that first before we worry about another. But thank you, Eileen. Yeah, I originally had, but that will cover it if
Okay.
we'll see if it works out. The only thing else is if it says it's going to be 100, because hopefully in most cases if it says it's going to be 180 days and all of a sudden it's 6 months, then we might be asking what happened. But so then it's like, okay, is there a suggested completed date or something? But hopefully.
Well, if we're gonna, I agree with what Dennis said. If we're using the completion date off of the documents and the terms based on that, I think that's a good starting point.
Yes, starting point. Yeah.
But understand that that's not going to be there for a design, or it's going to be there for physical turning of the dirt.
Right. And I think your point is valid too, because even if we've executed a contract that's 180 days with a contractor, there's always those third parties involved, i.e. WAPA and others, that things happen and outside the control of the contractor. So it will allow us to answer those questions. Yeah, we got to the 180 days, but we're going to have to extend the contract by 30 days because of this reason. Or there's some unknown field condition or whatever it is. That'll give you guys the opportunity to ask the why.
Yeah, I think as we start getting time, and Greg is right, we're hurting. As we get time to actually go through more of these, I think then we'll be able to find out if we need another column or not, or if things are being answered, but that's a good starting point.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are on the discussion of utility drafts, and I guess, so I ate a lot of time up on that, but I'm assuming you've had something pretty brief on that?
As far as,
The O&M for number 2 item, the O&M budget?
well, I can certainly make some comments and note some, what I see as changes that are, significantly different from previous years.
Speaking of mic, please.
Whoops, sorry about that, Holly. First of all, what I do want to note directly is what we have indicated here with regards to the electrical fund revenues.
Do you happen to have you don't happen to have the slides?
Oh, up there? No.
Okay, so.
But what so under the electric fund charge for services, which is 61044.
Okay, for those of us that, I guess, that have it, let's get it. So electric, what was that you said it was?
61044, what's the electric fund charge for services?
61?
Yep, so it would be basically the first page of the electric fund in the O&M budget.
Okay, I'm sorry, again, so the top one,
Yep.
Okay, I'm looking at the numbers underneath it. So you're looking at 61044, you said?
Yeah, so
Okay,
if you
gotcha.
go to the electric charges, the 4426, that projection for electric charges, we have taken the liberty, because we had to make a decision one way or another, whether to include the 3% energy charge reduction. So this $16,187,200 assumes a 3% reduction, but I just wanted, that's where that number came from. And then that same thing is represented in the water fund. So the water charges, there's on 62044, specifically the 2022 budget shows $9,644,200. That includes that $10 water service charge reduction. So, finance had to make an assumption of what to include in the draft budget. So, I guess feedback from the, what we should be presenting versus, because we're in this kind of transition phase of what's actually going to happen. So that's what's represented here is that reduction. So.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. If I remember correctly, especially the budget year, okay, so I'm looking at water 62044, and budget for the water service charge is 9,700,000. Is that
for FY21?
21, and then 22 is 96.
9,644,200.
So I'm pretty positive, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty positive that the Raffatilis report showed 21 at $11 million. So, and then they were also saying that it was a 14% reduction.
It very well may have. This is just what was done. The budget shown was what the 2020 budget for, independent of whatever Raffatilis showed.
Okay, and part of it I appreciate.
For the most
part of it is it's hard to follow report to report.
I understand, and for the most part, I will say we did go through what the Raffatilis report showed, more so for 2022 than 21. And for the most part, everything lines up. It's not exact, because our budget's not going to be exactly what they put in their rate study, and it never will be, because we make changes, and we've made changes since the Raffatilis report on specific items, but I guess I would say, I personally haven't gone back and looked at FY '20 budget versus what the Raftellus report says, but we did look at '22 directly.
Okay, yeah,
As from a going forward perspective.
But this is O&M, so what's your O&M expense for FY '22? You're giving us the total revenue requirement, that's 16 million for the electric, but what's the O&M for the electric?
So the O&M for the electric is primarily, if you go to 62,670, oops, I'm sorry, on water. For electric is 61,650 electric fund, electric charges. That O&M budget is 9.3 million. And the 2021 was 9.03. One of the changes there, since you asked that question, Mr. Ree, is that we increased the technical services line item from 50,000 a year to 100,000. And that really goes back to the questions that have been raised about being able to, essentially get projects out the door and into construction. So the concept here is we have a staff complement that includes an electrical engineer that we haven't filled that vacancy. What the idea here is to take that electrical engineer that is a part of the staff complement, although it's not funded, it was unfunded because of COVID, convert that to a project engineer / project manager that would work directly on getting utility projects designed and moving. And then we would just have an on-call services contract for electrical engineering support services because we really don't need a full-time electrical engineer.
Since you brought that up, I watched the city council meeting, and Diane made very sure from the city council that you were allowed to fill any vacancy that was budgeted for in the 21-year budget, current year budget.
Right.
So are we moving to do that, to hire managers or project managers, I think it is?
So there's, I believe, 3 positions in Public Works that provide support to utilities that I understand are going to be moved forward to be filled, but I believe they're being, because they were unfunded, and I'm hopefully using the right terminology, they have to be funded as part of the 22 budget to fill.
Okay, but I thought that those positions were in the 21 budget.
They were.
Okay.
But they were unfunded, so my terminology may be really messed up.
Yeah.
If we can fill them sooner, I'm all for that.
Okay. Well, I thought what I heard was city council was rescinding, if they were trying to blame it on city council that people weren't hired in the current fiscal year, that they were making sure that everybody, Diane, she mentioned it at least 3 times in that city council, in her presentation towards the end, that in the city council agreed that you could hire anybody that was in the 21 budget.
Okay, and I support that wholeheartedly.
Okay, well,
I can tell you there's probably some confusion because the example I'll give you in water and sewer is we had a water and sewer maintenance worker who we were about to make an offer to right before COVID. It was immediately unfunded, and I now have it back in this budget, not to be filled now.
But why not now?
And I will follow up on that because I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, because
the quicker we can fill them, the better.
Right.
I agree with that.
I was at home cheering the fact that she made very sure that those people could be hired. And the city council agreed to that.
Yep. So the difference here, and it may end up being there's a difference because we're talking about reclassifying the electrical to a project manager. Mm-hmm. So that would have to be done probably through the budget process.
Yeah.
That being said, the issue with regards to the water and sewer maintenance worker, if we can go forward immediately, I'm all ears.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's what I understood at the city council meeting.
Yeah. So. Let me follow up on that.
I just follow up on my O&M because you said that your numbers line up with Raftellus. But
Not
for
exactly.
FY '22, you have 9.3 million indeed in this table, but RefTel says 11 million for FY '22 for O&M for the electric. So just for the record, the numbers are quite different. I'm referring to the final report of RefTel.
Yep.
You mentioned that in the electricity, the technical services were going up from 50,000 to 100,000 because you're going to hire a engineer / project manager, correct?
Not quite.
Okay, can you repeat?
Yeah, let me repeat that. So what we are recommending is that we reclassify the current staff complement that includes an electrical engineer, which is currently vacant, to a engineer project manager. That would be included in the regular compensation line item.
So then why is technical
The
going up?
technical is going up because we still need electrical engineering support, but we don't need a full-time electrical engineer. So we would just use on-call, task-oriented, by task to fulfill that need that we currently have.
So why is it doubling?
Because we still use professional service for other things in a regular budget year, but,
That's not professional service, that's technical.
or technical service, I'm sorry. And it could be either one, and it's a budget item. They don't always get used. It's just the budget. So we have contracts that need to be reviewed at times by outside legal counsel. There's just these things that come up that are included in the budget, and in certain years they don't get used, and in certain years they do. So the increase is purely to address the need for the on-call electrical support.
I'm confused as to why that would double when you are filling a position with an engineer / project manager. I would think that the technical services would reduce.
No, because the technical services are typically utilized for studies and things like that come up, not for on-call. We need an engineer to come in and do an analysis of certain things. I mean, so it could be a master plan, it could be a study, it could be any number of things.
So this is
So-
what if?
Every year it's a what if on the 50,000. The 50,000 addition, we're saying, is specifically for on-call electrical engineering support. So the current 50 is, we could use 25,000 of that, we could use none of that, it could end up being more than that. It's it is essentially a budget line item. And I'll give you a perfect example of that in water, where EPA has mandated a risk and reliability study and an emergency response plan is due by June 31st of this year. That was not included in this year's budget because it was an unfunded mandate. So we will exceed the professional services category or technical services category in water because of that very issue. So.
For 21, and then it'll be going to
For
the 22
21.
budget?
No, what we strive for at the end of the year with any budget is that the overall budget, hopefully we don't exceed. So we try to manage the budget as a whole because we know there are things like this that happen in any given year where we may exceed one single line item, but the overall budget, we hopefully stay 1 or 2 or 3% under or whatever the number is.
So I guess maybe I misunderstood. Is this a one-time thing that they're doing, or is it gonna be a yearly?
This is a one-time thing that
Okay, so it
EPA
wouldn't
has
be increased in the
mandated.
future budget, you just had to get it done.
It just had to
under
get
their
it done by
mandate. Okay,
June
that's-
30th of this
that's why I
year. So,
misunderstood.
and I've just given that as an example of how that can happen.
Gotcha, okay.
So when we create these, they're not perfect. They are an estimate.
Well,
you
just
know, so-
sorry to interrupt too, but just help clarify, so George and Dennis both, is if you look at the study, in the Raftillis study, they have 3 lines of the admin billing, and that's not in this $9 million, George. It's farther down under, transfers out so that's part of the difference right there. So you can't go from line to line on the reports. Now, that one's understandable because they're separate
Well,
sections.
not by me, no.
Right, and they collapse a number of items into, total O&M, doesn't it? They took all these and collapsed them.
No, that's what I'm saying. So-
Okay.
Personnel.
I mean, if we're defining O&M in different ways, that's fine, but then we should make that clear, because I'm not an expert on this. They say something O&M expense, $11 million, I assume that's O&M. So your O&M isn't their O&M, so then it's hard to compare for a novice like me what the numbers mean.
It's, and I hate to tell you, but it never will. If there's any rate study you ever do, it's never going to be to that accurate level of accuracy and definition, because that's not what they do. They don't take they don't take our budgets and do a line by line, spreadsheet. That's just not how they do it. So they're condensing and collapsing and putting it into their model, and their financial model doesn't look exactly like our budget either, or our model that we will get from them doesn't either. At the end of the day, it should be close, but it's not going to be perfect.
Well, we can talk about that later. I got some things to say on that.
So.
Okay, sorry, Dennis, go ahead. If you want to finish your important stuff you wanted to point out.
Well, the main thing was those 2 revenues. I just wanted to let the committee know they included those reductions. That was an assumption finance had to make, whether they were going to be in FY22 or not.
Yeah, you got the mic. Sorry.
Whoops, sorry. Apologize for that. That's one of them. We mentioned the...
Well, while you're on electric, because you had mentioned it to me, I think, and it's obvious here, is also that, just so it's clear, that Raftillis had it budgeted as one thing from what studies they had seen, and you guys, if I'm understanding, the city decided to be safe, more conservative on the electrical, and I'm assuming, I don't know if we did the same thing in the water. You continued the $6 million for electric from both years instead of reducing it.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that was pointed out too.
Thank you. Outside of that, I believe then it's really kind of you guys to take the time to review and provide feedback. But those are the major modifications.
Well, okay, the question I guess I would have is, what type of feedback are you expecting from us? I know what feedback I have, but I don't know. I think it's more than what you want.
So I guess my view of the world is this is what finance and staff have put together. Clearly, we look harder at the O&M than we do the personnel. The regular temporary overtime, compensated absences, retirement premiums, Medicare, Social Security, all that stuff is just provided to us directly from finance. Everything else we kind of have a say in, or we review and provide feedback to finance, whether it's travel and training, software licenses, which usually just are what they are. There can be changes in professional services and technical services, as we've discussed. Maintenance kind of is what it is, so.
Do we have line items for line personnel? Did we get it crushed out of last year's budget? Do we still got enough in there for 2?
So.
Or are we going to 4?
We're sticking at where we current staff complement. So it's a great question, and I should have brought that up. So we have been challenged with a number of things. One is actually filling the current vacancies, which we have 2 lineman vacancies. They've been open now for almost a year. We've been able to have one almost successful, and unfortunately that individual had a health issue that interrupted that for probably months, who was highly qualified at both substation and lineman. And maybe someday we'll be able to circle back there, but we haven't been able to fill those two, so our strategy going forward is let's focus on getting the projects out the door as are in this current capital plan and in the current O&M plan for electrical. So really we're focused on the design side, and that we would revisit the two linemen as we go forward, but they wouldn't be included, Greg, in this budget. Yeah, that's what I said too, so. But it's a really difficult time right now for linemen. They are high demand. NV Energy, frankly, is having challenges keeping people because they're going to Southern California where the fires were. They're going down to the southeast. They're working 6 months and taking 6 months off because they're being paid. They're working 7 days a week and getting a ton of overtime, and so we've been blessed historically now and then where we've been able to, get somebody from NV Energy or whatever. We've had those positions open for a year, and we've had 3 interviews with folks that have met the minimum required qualifications. Historically, what we really want is somebody with 10 to 15 years of experience if we can, but, at this point in time, that's really difficult to get, so.
Real curious, how many linemen do you now have?
We now have, with the 2 vacancies, 5.
5, really? Wow.
I was glad Marvis is here.
5 active, or you said 5 active?
5 active, 2
7
vacant.
is what you're trying to.
Yep, and then we have
Okay.
2 substation techs and a meter guy.
And how many of those guys live in Boulder City?
Probably none.
Wow.
Goose egg, and that's not unusual. 0. 5 linemen, 2 substation techs, and a meter / streetlight person. And we have a substation, to really make this even more fun, we have a substation tech who's retiring in April. So.
And those 5 lineman positions are full,
Those are full, 2 are vacant.
so there's 5 plus 2.
There's 7 total on the lineman side. 2 substation techs and the meter person.
So Josh, I think we'd ask about a org chart. Is there any chance of that getting updated in the future?
Yeah, I believe the one I sent was probably the most current one.
I don't remember seeing one. Did I miss something?
Org chart. Did you guys get an org chart? Do you remember that? Org chart.
Org chart.
Organizational chart.
Organizational?
Okay, apparently not. We'll resend it.
I'll resend it. I was pretty sure I sent that, but I'll resend it.
Okay, because that should help us get an idea of when we can get a little more educated on what's going on.
It'll basically show the electrical group, the water and sewer group. And of course, there's no staff for landfill except us 2 that provide support.
I guess, let me just bring a few things up and make sure everybody else gets their chance to do it. But the one thing is so in our resolution that created us, we were tasked with reviewing the revenue requirements. And then the revenue requirements are basically a big portion of what you've given us in these sheets are the revenue requirements for the utilities. And then also that it greatly affects the rates, of course. And so that's the part of the question is you can go down some of these lines and you explain some of the increases. Some of the increases are looks, standard, and some of them look high. So you explain the technical and some of those. So I guess if some of them are high, then are you okay with us coming back and asking the problem, or because I'm just trying to?
I think that's exactly what I think would be the best way to move forward is just get the questions from you guys. I think us sitting here trying to answer them here probably doesn't make as much sense as let's get the questions and let's get you the answers. And that could be either by response by email or we can do it at the next meeting. From a strategic perspective, it's probably best to get you the answers by email sooner rather than wait for the next meeting.
No, but is this something that the city expects or that the council would, because last year with the COVID, everything sort of got screwed up, so we didn't have, I don't think we really got anything in on the budget necessarily. So are we expected to put something out to say if we agree or disagree with the budget, or what?
I don't know that there's an expectation at that level. I think at a minimum, they're gonna want to know that the committee has reviewed the budget. I guess, to me, what would be preferable is that you guys ask those questions where you have, either where there's a discrepancy between numbers that you're concerned about, and at least give staff an ability to respond so that we can hopefully address the committee's questions and answer them sufficiently so that we can say, yes, the committee has reviewed this, they had a number of questions, we had some back and forth discussion, and either we got them resolved or we didn't, and at least let council know that. To me, that's kind of the minimum that council should be aware of.
What date are we looking at to have final comments?
I knew you were going to ask that question. So on the operating and maintenance budget, and I believe the schedule's changed a little bit, however, the first meeting with council is next week on February 10th at 1 o'clock. There's a citizen budget workshop on February 24th. There is a special council meeting budget, O&M budget meeting on March 10th. That one is where they're now going to discuss the tentative CIP approval, which I realize isn't operating, but it's on my list. Which, as you know, originally was going to be February. They moved it out to answer golf course questions, utility questions, and some of those things are getting resolved here. A potential city council special meeting number 3 in April, but the final notice of public hearing for the budget would be on May 15th. So I guess in that regards, we have a little bit of time.
If we have any major concerns, though, we probably should try to get things squared away, but through somewhere in April, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think the best thing, frankly, is if you guys take your time in the next week or so, because I understand you just got it last week, where you see the biggest line item discrepancies that would make an impact to, the budget the most. Let's get those questions to staff. We would try to answer them even before the March meeting, but no later than the March meeting.
Well, it would probably be helpful, so I guess we'll decide if we need if we want to continue this for a little bit, to have like a workshop beforehand and then a regular meeting, so do that again in March. But I think it would be helpful with everybody to have finance to actually be able to answer some questions.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable because, like you adequately stated, and we talked about, there's a number of those line items that they just come from finance to us. And if let's say there's a 10% increase from last year, they would be the ones to answer that, not us. So yeah, we can make sure they're available.
Okay.
And again, that's where having those questions ahead of time would be helpful too.
Well, the one thing that we've asked over and over and over again, and I think the one report that's going to be in the main meeting, so I guess since that document's not in here, I can only talk generally to it. It sounded like they were trying to answer our question about explain the admin funds.
Yeah.
And that sheet did not do that. It just confused the issue. So we're still trying, so right now you have the report, Rafty's report, the city manager's report, and this has 3 main aspects to it, if I'm understanding correctly. You have the admin central service fund, you have the admin fund, and you have the billing and collection fund. Mm-hmm. And I've been asking over and over again, what is and that's what, and Fred said the same things. It'd be nice to understand what FTEs go with those funds. The Rafty's report claims that the admin fund that is $949,000 for 22 budget includes the 4 personnel to run all of the utilities. That sounds like a high number for 4 people. So we've asked to that breakdown, and we have not received that. And that's what I was hoping to get at this meeting. And so without finance, I realize we can't get that information. But it would be nice to understand what goes into all that, because that is a major portion of the, you know, when you're looking at $3 million plus, it's a pretty big portion of the revenue requirement. And it does nothing, it's fluctuating, but it looks like it's just gonna do nothing but go up. And so, would like to understand a better breakdown of that.
Okay, so I'm making that note here with regards to the administrative charges. You know, yep, we'll just make that a specific agenda item. with
Yes, that would
regard-
be,
and I
it'd
think-
probably be in the workshop, would probably be better, because then we could go through it a little bit. But if you, so I guess when we get Fred's comments, he had he had a few comments relating to that also. And so I think we have the same comments or questions as he's had in some of his relating to the funds. Because he did mention that he was looking for FTEs. Maybe the FTE isn't the proper way to say it, but can you give us a general idea of how many people that would include? You know, so you got, what you have is you say, okay, well, in the central service, it just says inter-fund salary, so who does that include? And so the report, that's in the next meeting, we can go over that a little bit, because it's sort of broken down, but the admin fund, so your 5,001 regular, we have no idea what that salaries include. Same thing with billing. How many people? So the breakdown is helpful. I appreciate that, the breakdown, to try to get an understanding. And I guess so for right now, right off the top, if you want to put one in that can do it under the admin fund billing, is you've got printing 5507, and you have the actuals for 2018, 19, and 2020. And in 2020, the actuals are 41,000, round up to 42. You budgeted 117, so I guess there are times where things go. You're assuming that there's going to be that's almost 3 times the amount. So then you carried that budget forward for 21 and 22. So almost 3 times the amount of what the actual seems a pretty high amount.
Yeah, and I can take a stab at that, but I think that had to do with the change, the modification in our banking and printing services and billing, outsourced billing, but that's a finance question.
But I thought that started in 2020. Didn't that start in 2020? So that should have shown a big expense increase.
I don't think it
I don't
started
think it
till
started in
21,
2020.
the current year. And yeah, that is a change, that all the utility bills that you receive are not printed in-house.
Right.
That's outside now.
So, but to get you, let's have finance answer that versus me winging it. So.
Yeah, because even if it doubled, that seems pretty bad. That because this is almost tripled. So okay.
I have a couple of comments on this. The draft that Angela put together, this is the most detail that I think I've ever seen, and that's a step in the right direction. On it's about the 4th page, under 60049, utility, admin, other finance, the transfers in from utility funds, could that be broken out to for each utility fund?
Okay.
Because the transfers have always driven me crazy.
Okay, so you're looking at 60049?
Yes.
Yep, I can quiz finance on that.
Okay, and
Broken.
and then on the page that's a couple pages later, under 61980, the 5975 transfers out to the admin fund. In the actual for this so far, that's half of this year is $848,000. You know, what's that expense for?
Okay, can you say that number again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Yes, 61980 EF reserve transfer, electric fund transfer. at 59.7, under, the one under that is 59.75. That's the account number.
6198. Why am I not seeing this?
Find it. It starts at the top of the page, it's 61650, electric fund depreciation.
Ah, hold on.
So the bottom one of the 61980, account number 5975,
75,
transfers
I
out to
gotcha.
admin fund. It's, you know, for 6 months this year, it's 847,000.
Right.
So, well, you know, what's that for? What's the detail? The other, you know, thing that when I first started looking at this, Dennis, was I was trying to compare it to the numbers that are in Diane's financial report to the city manager. And yeah, it's a lot more detail, but I was even having a hard time figuring out what was income and what was expense. Because of the way it's put together on these sheets, if it could be more like Diane's report to the city manager monthly, it might be, you know, that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, and that's, I would certainly have, you know, whether, yes, yeah, I can certainly mention that to them. I don't know if, you know, because then you're really talking about changing how they're depicting the current budget, the way they do it today. I don't know how easy or difficult that may or may
Yeah,
not
it would
be.
be,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Well,
I guess even if you give us sort of a heading, because you want that detail, you want the same detail
Oh,
here
I
that's
like
not,
the- yeah, the
in the
detail,
city manager,
right,
just
yeah.
try to get the headings to match somehow.
yeah, this is a lot more detail for, and, you know, like on page,
And offhand, I don't know if what's in the city manager report is trying to depict a budget versus.
well, it shows
actual.
budget and actual for month by month.
Okay.
It's at the very bottom of the packet for the city council meetings.
Okay.
And it's called Diane's report to the city manager.
Right.
You know, another question on the water fund taxes. There's something here for the budget's 600,000 for 21, and it says infrastructure sales tax, and what is that sales tax?
So the infrastructure sales tax is a sales tax, quarter-cent sales tax that was approved by Clark County, oh gosh, I don't know, 1998, something like that. And that was to provide revenue to support Southern Nevada Water Authority.
Okay.
It primarily started with Southern Nevada Water Authority to help fund some of the infrastructure at the time and, you know, through
Okay.
today.
So it's sales tax.
It's an ongoing quarter-cent sales tax. It turned in essentially into a water and sewer, because obviously if you're going to add water infrastructure, there's a you know, a
Right.
relating sewer infrastructure.
Okay,
So
wow.
we get a portion of that revenue annually.
Okay, I understand
as
what
part
you're
of that.
saying.
So, and that, I believe they removed the sunset on that, so that should be ongoing for, up until the state legislature
Oh, okay.
would change it.
All right, yeah, like I say.
We did, and while you're on that, we did, we reduced that to 600,000. If you see the 2019 actuals, they were a little over 1 million. We didn't know what was gonna happen with COVID, so we reduced the 2021 budget to 600,000. We upped it to 800,000, but
22, yeah.
we don't know.
That's a guess, yeah.
It's a guess.
What was that I'm sorry, I missed when I was.
In the infrastructure sales tax, back in 2019, we actually received
Okay.
1 million. We budgeted 850,000 for 2020. COVID hit, so we reduced the 21 budget to $600,000 worth of that quarter-cent sales tax revenue. And you can see there, looking at the actuals, you know, whether we're going to get the 600,000 is questionable. We don't know what's going to happen with the economy in 2022, but we upped it to 800,000.
Well, that goes back to my earlier comment about, that Diane put together what needed to be reduced in the budgets by the revenues. She was reducing revenues by 40%. And she mentioned at the city council meeting the other night that really has turned out to be only about 15%.
Yes, it's been better than we projected.
a lot
So,
better. So,
am I comfortable with the $800,000?
No, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to be more than that. Hopefully not substantially less.
Right.
But at this point in time, it's hard to project. What we used was I can't think of the name of the firm, but there was a firm that did work for the county that did some of those projections based on what they thought was going to happen with the economy, and these numbers are somewhat based on that.
Well, some of those numbers were questionable when they got them because they were showing a huge decrease in property tax income. Well, the bills are already out and we're paying the property tax.
Yep.
I mentioned it to Diane, but whatever.
And this would really be the only revenue source that we believe would be impacted on the utility side. We haven't seen any substantial increases in ability for folks to pay their bills or late. We obviously are working with a number of customers on payment plans and stuff like that, but it hasn't been significant.
Right.
It's a little above normal, but most people are still able to pay their bills.
Right. While I have the mic on, I was going to ask, for the budget meeting this week with City Council, are there handouts available that we could get a copy of the budget that they're going to use for that meeting?
I'm going to go on the assumption that there will be. And when I walked into Angela's office earlier, I know she was working on a presentation, so it's probably due no later tomorrow for that meeting next Wednesday. So
I was just wondering.
I would anticipate a package to be
because
uploaded.
They usually print,
Yep. So
a very nice. That's one thing Diane has done with the budgets. Her budget presentations are very nice. I just wondered if that was available.
It will be. I don't think. I know they were working on it diligently because I just sent what I described to you as those recommendations to fill that water and wastewater maintenance worker position, as well as reclassifying the electrical engineer and adding the on-call support, is going to be a part of that presentation.
Okay, well, I just wondered if I could get my hands on one.
I would expect that it will be available I think it pretty much has to be uploaded tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Oh, Thursday, yeah.
Yes, Thursday, yep.
Okay, I had a question. I'm sorry, I'm kind of slow, but I'm not seeing this 3% decrease in the charges that you're talking about, because for 2021, it's 16.58 for the electric, and 2022, it's 16.4, which is a 1% difference, not a 3% difference. So it's 3% relative to what? No, he's saying that the costs are going down by 3%, but I don't see them going down.
I don't think it was a direct 3% from the previous year. I think what we just did was made some assumptions because it's budget. Remember, we didn't take an exact. Here's what last year was 3%, and then reduce it by 3%. It's just a projection. So
it's reducing.
It's not linear.
The bill,
it's not exact.
The people's bills, and it's the revenue coming into on the electric.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
I know what it is, and it's not 3% of the previous amount. It's not a decrease by that amount.
No, it's not a decrease by that amount. I agree with that, but what we did do was reduce the number because we know there's going to be a decrease in the rate.
No, but I mean, we need to be numerate because it actually is 3% of one of the numbers in your table, but you should know which one because you're the one who's telling us that it is. So you guys need to be understanding the numbers that you're presenting to us. So it's actually 3% relative to 2020, but not 2021. So people are not going to see a 3% decrease of their bill in FY22. So we need to be precise with what we're
They're
saying.
not going to see a 3% decrease in their bill. They're going to see a 3% decrease in their energy rate.
Right.
Yeah.
So the bill itself isn't going to reduce by 3%. And the $10 charge is going to be a reduction in the charge, but it's not going to be there's not a percentage reduction in the water bill.
Yeah, but the $10 charge is much less than, it's a fraction of a percent, so that,
No, it's actually a lot higher.
Actually, it's a lot higher.
So yeah, we'll talk about that at the rate study.
well, if that's the case, why then do the numbers decrease by exactly 3% for electric charges from 2020 to 22?
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, I think it's a coincidence.
Because it really, what it is, it should be, if you were looking at the raffities, I believe, I'm assuming what happened is you took, because you're using exactly the same amount that Raftillis used for their reduction, which they took into account the different formulas and stuff, and so their 2021 was 16,668,000. So that's where things are a little confusing, is because so you guys use what probably you're budgeting.
That's correct. We didn't go back and try to make this budget exactly line up with Raftalis study.
Right. So,
And I wouldn't think, and I've never seen anybody try to do that.
yeah, and again,
a budget versus a rate study is two different things.
Well, in that case, it might be worth listing the rates and exactly by how much you've decreased them, so we can do the math ourselves then.
well, that's what we're going to be talking about later. Is what we think is going to. So again, I think if I understand correctly, is that they're not necessarily saying they've decided how it's going to be done. They've decided that Raftillis had the, I'm sorry, speaking for you, but the way I'm looking at it is that you took the number out of Raftillis' study, which was the reduction amount, and then that's something we're going to talk about to say what we and how we think it could be done.
Right. And remember, it's based on whatever the demand projections are as well, so that changes. So,
So why are the rates based on the demand projections? I mean,
They're
if
not,
you're decreasing the rates, then you're decreasing the rates. Or you're not doing that.
No, we're decreasing the energy rate.
But that is not dependent on the demand
I agree, but
projection.
I misstated that, but still, that's different than what the total bill is going to look like. That's not going to be 3%.
Okay, all right.
So,
Yeah, because Raftillis' study stated, I believe it was 2.7% for energy and 14% for water.
so and really, I want to go back to, this is a budget. That's what this is, and that's very different from a rate study that's done, where there's going forward projections, they're going forward demand projections, there's estimates on, decreases in energy use because of solar and energy efficiencies. I think we actually assumed there would be a 1% reduction in demands going forward. Same thing on water. So those things don't comport directly with budget in this budget. And
Okay, fair enough. Then it's an odd coincidence that numbers that are quoted, 7-figure numbers, would add up to exactly 3%.
I think it's odd too, because we didn't do that.
Because the chances of that are zero.
We didn't do that.
All right, well, okay.
No, what Angela and I did really was we went back through this. We did look at the Raftalis. Is this close? Is it within a percent, with a certain level of, is it way off? If it's way off, then why? And we made modifications that way, but we didn't make it exactly tie back to the rate study.
Well, that number did by chance.
Yeah.
That number did.
Yeah, and some of them are.
The other ones don't, I understand, but I
There's
think.
a few that are within $100,000 or a couple $100,000, and some that are closer and some that are farther apart.
Yeah, well, you pointed it out, and I appreciate it, because it did look a little strange that, that since we haven't agreed on the 3%, that, or council even hasn't approved it, that it's in there. So if it gets approved, then this goes forward and there's no problem. If it doesn't get approved, then we'd probably have to use the existing, I would assume we'd want to use the existing rates.
And I'll give you a weird oddity just because we're having this discussion, because things are changing as we speak, is September, October, November, December water demands are substantially higher than previous years for Boulder City. Joshua and I are scratching our heads, and we're doing some research. Is that all irrigation with golf courses? Is that all of a sudden our domestic use has changed? Which I can't imagine that's changed much. Interestingly enough, 2 other of our agencies over the hill have had similar increases percentage-wise, a lot more water, obviously, for them. but the water district themselves have stayed flat, so.
So you're saying the last year, right?
Yeah, just the last few months up
Yeah,
to
because
today,
we were pretty warm.
and those can impact these numbers, so.
But that's just, I mean, it's getting warmer for sure, and it's not raining, so a combination of those two.
Yeah, it's just odd for the winter when we do have, you go to 1-day water use, all that stuff, and when you look at the previous 3 years, they're pretty flat. But then all of a sudden this year, it's like, what?
Which months did you say that was?
Pretty much starting in September, October for sure, October, November, December, January.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So through January, I'd understand would be a little
And
more
I
confusing.
believe it's about a 15% plus or minus each month.
Yeah, that would be,
Which is really,
if you
know,
are sticking to the
we're
water.
honing in on irrigation usage because we don't believe it would be a normal residential use. But we haven't, I just bring it up as an oddity that, when we're, projections
I
could
don't
be
think it's
off.
that odd, but
I agree with you on the climate part. It's definitely been warmer.
I mean, the projections for the inflows, which is, I still maintain is our water supply from the Colorado River, are the lowest they've been in 30 years for Lake Powell for this water year. They're 46% of normal from, so, yeah, the writing's on the wall with that, but anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that was an editorial comment I just made or what, but it kind of goes back to what we do when we're budgeting. There are things that impact our budgets.
Well, under the resource plan or something, or conservation, those are good things to bring forward to the committee so we can understand things like that. And it's helpful information.
Yep.
Okay, we need to get moving on to the next call. You have a question?
How many water meters have we changed?
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying, you have an oddity if you're going around
not that many. Not that many.
Okay.
And if we did, we haven't changed any large meters, so
Okay.
that's where we would see that almost immediately. And now we would change a large meter in the winter.
Yeah, and I know that my better half and myself, we definitely increased our laundry by about 70%. So I know that water's being used there because of COVID, getting everything cleaned up, getting everything done.
That's some truth there.
That's interestingly enough, so I'll throw the other oddity out there. Our wastewater flows are flat. They haven't increased, so, for those same months.
Personally, I've used a lot more water on my lawn because we didn't have any rain from April until like last week was the first noticeable rain.
And I think that's a big part of it, just like George said. It's just a bigger percentage than I would have anticipated.
I think Eileen needs the mic.
We're still talking about the budget, right? Okay. First of all, I have to say that I am extremely disappointed that no one from finance was here to present this. It's pretty much a given that we would have questions, and the fact that we have to give our questions and then wait for responses, to me, is just delaying our input to the council. And if I remember correctly from our discussions, the reason we put this on this agenda item, or in February, was so that we could get answers and then prepare a report for council in time for their budget deliberations. So I'm extremely disappointed in that. I had several questions on the budget. The first page, there's a VERF expense of $32.72 under the Utility Administration Fund Central Services. And I was wondering what that was for. It's a 60460 and then line item number 5403. There's a VERF expense of $32.72. And where is that going? Is that going into the general fund's VERF fund? And if so, it shouldn't, because it's coming out of a...
I'm going to verify this, but I think where we've gone with this is right now the general fund is the only one that's going to have a VERF, and that's only for general fund vehicles. Because we're separately enterprise fund, I think they were originally contemplating a VERF. I think they're just getting away from that. And it would just, our replacement vehicles would be a normal part of the budget process. So enterprise. So I will verify that though, just.
Okay, so you're gonna find out why that is in there?
The $3,200.
Okay. And then under the admin fund, central services, there's software licenses of 62,520. Is that for your CMMS?
Yes, that is correct.
So you guys are getting that, huh?
We have, yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier, that is, and that'll be a part of that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier, that will be a part of the presentation on next Wednesday as well.
Great, thanks.
And then, I think Larry already mentioned it, in the budget, they need to, instead of just saying regular employees and then a salary, they need to show us how many employees and what their titles are. Like, for example, director 1, engineer 2, analyst 1, so that we have an idea of how many employees are being paid into that fund. I wanted to know what compensated absences are. That should be covered in the regular salary. That's right. Under the utility admin fund, when it says,
So, to answer that, I think that compensated absences, if you look at the 20, 21, 22, they've removed that, so.
okay, I'll check that further.
But you can still check.
Under the utility admin fund, there's maintenance for vehicles. Is that for just the parts, not labor? I'm on page 3.
Okay, 1 minute.
UT admin fund. Billing.
Oh, you're in billing, okay,
Yeah,
so
I'm
that's
sorry.
for, that
And-
would be for, maintenance related to the meter reading vehicles.
So that's meter reading. So the meter reading comes out of the admin fund billing and not the
That's correct. So
the individual.
The guy that drives around and does the touch to read and the meter reading is in finance.
Okay.
And it is an electrical vehicle.
It's electric? Then why is there $1,000 or $500 in fuel?
It's probably hybrid.
Okay. And so, in the, again, admin fund billing, uniform allowances, $5,000 budget, how many people wear boots?
I would have to get back to them. I know they have a uniform allowance, with regards to, some of those folks. I don't know the exact answer to that.
Because I would think out of the billing department, maybe the meter reader would be the only one that would be eligible for a boot allowance.
They may have some, the customer service may have shirts. I don't. Oops. I will get back to you on that.
It's in every utility, yeah.
Yep.
And I wanted to know what is the SIIS premiums? And then I noticed that the retirement line item is sometimes 25 to 30% of the regular budget. That seems awfully high to me.
So that's PERS, if that's what you're talking about,
Yeah.
employee retirement?
Yeah.
That's what's on the PERS, so.
So does PERS have a percentage?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you what that is right now. It's 24%. I don't know what the actual, I'll get you that number.
Okay.
No, because that's not just an enterprise fund, that's everyone.
Yes. Yes. There's also a listing under the electrical fund charges, and it says other employee benefits. And that's a $4,000 line item. What are other employee benefits?
Don't know. Okay.
And then there's professional services of $150,000 budgeted for 2022. And that is like double the highest in previous years. So what is that supposed to be for?
Is that, I'm saying, I marked mine out, does it say 150?
Yeah. 5102.
No, I bet you that's where I'm gonna have to verify that, because we may have doubled up on this one. Accidentally, because that.
Well, that says
on-call electrical, so that's a good catch.
And then there's solid waste services.
Oh, I do know one of those.
Oh,
Okay,
technicals, 100,000.
let me go back, Eileen, to answer the question. We did add $50,000 to technical, and I think I might have misstated this earlier. We added $50,000 to technical, because my thinking is we are going to have to do some sort of, infrastructure impact study related to the overall solar rooftop issue that we've been discussing. So it's a placeholder till we figure out exactly what that needs to look like. So that was what the technical increase was. The professional was the on-call electrical.
So that's going to go up by 100,000?
Correct. I doubt it, but that's what we budgeted. I don't think it'll be anywhere close to that. It'll probably be half that. So we can reduce that. But.
My concern is if it's in the budget, it gets spent. I've worked for a city. I know in June you're spending money like crazy so that you can make your budget, because if you don't make your budget, then next year it's not going to get increased. Under the electrical, there's software licenses for $15,000. What does that include?
That's the SCADA. So that's supervisor data and acquisition control. So that's the SCADA licenses. What's that? It's mapping, it's SCADA, it's a combination of everything. In the water, we have the same thing with SCADA, water and sewer.
GIS.
GIS, all those good things.
Then we get to page 7 where there's an electric fund for non-electric. And I brought this up last year. The electric fund should not be paying for anything that is non-electric. So what is this for?
So non-electric is for maintenance of city facilities, et cetera, that have nothing to do with the customer's utility system, our customer's utility system.
What kind of buildings would that be?
So City Hall, city facilities, Parks
So-
and Rec.
So shouldn't the city pay for that instead of it coming out of the rate?
That should be an interfund transfer. That shouldn't be,
So,
Yeah, it should come towards us, not
because
towards
there's
them.
$150,000
Yeah, it's a little bit
in
high.
Maintenance of
agree.
facilities.
That's a
So,
good,
yeah, so, let me make sure I've defined that correctly, and I certainly wouldn't argue with that point.
Because last year when I asked, I was told it was money that was spent to help pay for art in the park and electrical uses like that.
I think when it comes down to equipment, facilities, and that sort of thing, I believe it does.
but still, it's,
the electric fund should not be paying for art in the park or anything else. It should be paying for electric services and any other charges like for facility maintenance or whatever should come out of interfund transfers and be
Let me-
accounted for.
Look at Marvis, am I getting that right, Marvis? What's that, sir? The non-electric fund, as far as the services that are provided, are related to outside the customer's infrastructure, the system that's serving our customers.
But what is that?
So, it's basically city facilities
Again,
on the electric side. Yep, I agree.
okay.
I know it was always that way, even signs on the highway, the billboards, art in the park, the electric personnel, hanging streetlights. I mean, Christmas decorations, I should say.
Christmas
All that
decorations
stuff,
is a big one.
just always covered by the electric department.
But what I'm saying is that by law, it's not supposed to. By law, the electric fund can only pay for electric items. Anything else should not be paid for, should be paid out of the general fund or through transfers.
Okay.
Oh, let me see, yes, that one. Let me see. There's $75,000 into equipment and the water fund charges. What is that for?
So if you take a look at that, we've actually reduced that, we've continued to reduce that over time. So that's for, various equipment, related to maintenance of the system. And it is a little bit confusing because we have maintenance equipment, we have maintenance facilities, we have maintenance vehicles, maintenance grounds. So as we move forward, we're trying to combine some of those to make it less confusing, as we get them more defined, so. I can't comment directly. What I am telling you is that we're taking a harder look at all of those and trying to collapse them somewhat.
I would think it would be less transparent if you collapse them into one line item. I think
No, I don't
that-
think it'll be one. What I'm saying is this one all by itself is not as defined as these are, so. And you'll see we're kind of reducing that over time.
so Eileen, I hate to shut you down, but if you got something major, we've got an hour left for two subjects, so probably gonna have to move on. You got something specific you want to add to it?
Nope, that was the last of it.
Okay, I
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time, I apologize.
And for any of you, if you have additional, just email myself or Josh and we'll.
I just had a comment for Eileen. I agree with what you're doing. I think at the end of the day, we have to go through item by item and understand exactly what's going on, because comparable cities have much lower rates than we do. We can compare ourselves to Vegas if it amuses ourselves. But when you look at a similar, like, say, Page, Arizona, their rates are much lower than ours, and every one of their items is lower than ours. So we need to go through item by item and understand what's going on. So I think you're on the right line of reasoning there.
No, I agree that we definitely, like I said, I didn't mean to shut it down, because just, we have to get going. But, I guess we have a little bit of time, so I'd like to do a little bit more, I guess on our own, but also in here, so in the next March, does that agree with everybody? So we make sure we put this on in the March agenda? And then we can discuss it in more detail, and then if we can get finance here, that would be great.
Yep, and we'll additionally have a specific agenda item related to the administrative fund.
Yes, we definitely need that, so, okay. Thank you. So now we go to item number 3, and so we really don't, let's see, so we've got basically half an hour, 45 minutes max, and that cuts us our rate study into, so we have, is there 2 issues or just the 1 issue? Are we just gonna go over the report, or are we doing anything on capital improvement plan itself?
If you like, I can just give a quick what we did to the 5-year plan, just so you guys don't have to compare the two to the last one.
Greg, do we have time for that?
It's really
Okay.
quick. You want me to do that, Greg? You want to do it, or? Really, it was the biggest change from the previous edition that you've seen, because you can see this is revised January 27th. So we sat down and met approximately 2 weeks ago with Marvis, myself, Joshua, and Mr. Todd. Electric 20-105 Substation 3 rebuild. As we went through the prioritization and the fact that certain projects have to be done before others, we made changes to, give us a little bit more leeway with regards to those project schedules, because they are dependent upon each other. So we pushed the Substation 3 rebuild out. The design, which we had $500,000 for, was in FY22. It is now in FY23, with construction in FY24. So that was that was probably the main one. We also pushed the removal of the substations, which obviously we have a little bit of leeway with when we can, demolish those. That is the Electric 20-119, we pushed that out to FY26. And there again, in that one, we have some ability to push that one out.
Well, the removal is not a problem at all, but the cutover is more of a, if we've got equipment that is.
Yeah, we'll be able to do the cutover. So we talked about that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And then I believe we left the transmission switches where it was, or we might have moved, that one I gotta go back and look at.
We moved the transmission switches up
We
to
moved it up,
23.
right. Yep, we moved those from up to 23, right?
Yeah, basically what I tried to accomplish with this, and we're working together, is we're trying to level the expenses also over a several-year plan. But we're also being realistic as what we have for what we've got to accomplish before we can go to the next step. There was a mention to me about let's put them in chronological order as to what we need to do in order to get them done. And I say that based upon what we talked about tonight, we're going to have an urgency and a precursor, an alpha and a numeric number on our things to where we're going to be able to move those around as to what we need. The biggest problem I saw was the spike in the money. Okay, we had one, before we started messing with this, we had one year that was like almost $7 million. And we've now leveled the playing field to where we're not hitting a hard budget line item, and we're trying to get stuff in advance to where we can reduce the cost of the item before it's delayed a couple of years out. This is the best possible guess and reason we can take and do what we're doing, and this document here that we're looking at is what drives the report. So that's what's going on with that. This again is another living document. Like I know that we're working already on the San Felipe Mendota feeder. That's already something that's been going on and continue to go on. There's some stuff around here that, like the Red Mountain distribution line rebuild for FY22. Well, in FY21, there's also got to be a little bit of money for engineering. Okay, this doesn't transfer back, this doesn't go backwards. So we've got to look at this as another living document that we're trying our best to write a report on to give to City Council. I guarantee you in FY23, this report will look all different again. Okay, so when we do the actual FY23 report, or we close out the FY22 report, we'll see things change again. And that's what I helped write the report on, is all these projects. And some things are probably going to move. One of them that you talked about at the council meeting was the water 21-102. Okay, the line's not charged, it's not active, it's not live, so why do we need pressure reducing valve stations on the new water line. And I happened to catch that one that you were in front of the dais talking to the council about it. So it's just stuff like this that we have to anticipate. It's put in the budget for the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is written on this utility CIP that's dated revised January 27th, 2021. And that's how the report's been written.
And for the purposes, this does mean we would have to make a modification to the FY22 report, George, that you gave. Just a slight modification because we made this change with the substation 3 rebuild being pushed out. That's why I was mentioned to you beforehand, but I didn't want to complicate it for that for that meeting right before the meeting. So
Well, maybe we can, when whoever presents the 5-year CIP can give an updated version of that report. Or
that's exactly what I was thinking as well. So.
That works. So I think one of the difference that I'm seeing in the report is that if instead of having a plan, you're using the SIP as the plan, and then you're just explaining in your number 1, so we'll get to there pretty quick, you're explaining that this is what has to happen. So in the report, you've got an explanation. In the previous report, we had talked about actually having a plan, but things are still evolving, so we're not going to have an actual plan as of yet. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, one of the main problems you have is you have to have engineering in place. Okay, if nobody's designed a substation yet, we can't have a plan as to when we're going to implement the construction of the substation. Now, something that's changed since this document was written, okay, is the fact that our new president has now mandated no more oil pipelines, no more generation, everything's going wind and solar. So now what that does is that drives our substation transformers from a 22 MVA transformer to a 33 MVA transformer. Now, do we do it now, when a transformer life is 20 years, or do we wait and come back and change them out 5 years from now when all of a sudden everything hits the fan and we're cooking our cans?
We do it now.
Well, I think that's what, Greg, I appreciate everybody's time for having the meeting that you guys did. That was very helpful. And so in the future, to answer some of those questions, I'm hoping maybe we can have some individual meetings with the city. Dennis, if that worked out, is okay. Something like Greg sitting down
absolutely.
with you, and then more detail also at workshops.
Yep.
And so we can go back and forth, try to understand the information, and then by maybe some of the knowledge that any of us have from our past experiences might be able to help with.
Right, and I can almost guarantee that as we delve into some of these projects and we get into the pre-design work, we're going to find stuff that wouldn't, because they're looking at a different level of detail when these guys are out doing the condition assessment work. So, we're getting, like Greg said, there will be changes to these projects as we move forward. We got feedback from the public and a city council person with regards to odors at Lift Station 1 just recently, which we've talked about. We did some improvements there already, which appear to be working, but those improvements in and of themselves probably won't solve the entire problem. But we did include some additional improvements in the condition assessment. But again, once you get the pre-design and you define what those are, it could change these numbers.
Right, so now, so has everybody had a chance to review the document that Greg put out, Greg and George?
The only thing I would put, and it's not a big deal, is I noticed on that the first paragraph where it talks about where the transformers are hung on poles, but we don't have any underground vaults, so we just use pad mount transformers here. But nobody's going to really pick up on that, but that's the only thing I can see.
Okay, well, on the specific aspect, then I guess when Josh gets back, let's pull it up on the screen, and we can make some of those. I have some changes myself, and I gave them to Josh, and if you agree with them, then we can make them. If you don't agree, then of course we won't do it. But I guess let's just say, is the biggest thing now, so making sure I'm understanding, do we feel comfortable enough that we want to vote for this, make the changes and vote for this in the regular meeting following, or is there anything else that we want to look at before we're, this is voted on?
This time I didn't, because of the timing, I didn't get a chance to meet with Greg and give my input, and I'm not quite sure there's enough time, but maybe if other people feel there is, I'd like to see some more, it could be made more useful to the council. It's not that I want to disagree with what's there, but I think we could make it quite a bit better. But that's just my opinion, so I don't
Do you have some input? Do
you want it now? I can give it now.
Well, let's get it up on the deal, but if you had it in writing, it'd be helpful to give it to Josh, but is there quite a bit or just some minor changes?
Well, it's, as usual with me, it's more like generalities. Like, I think one thing is what order things happen in. It might be worth ordering the projects, like putting San Felipe first, and then the substation rebuild, and then taking down 1 and 2 so that they understand that what order things have to happen.
The thing I found out in the meeting, which isn't detailed because I'm very nervous about letting stuff out to the general public that is not supposed to be let out due to security and safety reasons. But with the new underbuild of the 12 kV coming from sub 6 up to sub 3, that line is robust enough to carry a good portion of the load to where San Felipe is basically going to carry a little additional, but not 50% of the load. So as things are evolving, we as the committee have to be very careful that we don't divulge too much information to where somebody that is not of, we'll say, nefarious means to take and be able to figure out what the heck's going on. What was the capacity from sub 6 to 3 on that new underbuild, Marvis? Just a guess. That's a pretty good system right there. If it'll carry 3 circuits, we'll say, just for record. And so that'll relieve quite a burden off of sub 3 because sub 6 can carry it. And then when you bring in the 5 to 3 feeder underground cable and overhead, then you've got another one to back up and help carry the load on 3. So to say that San Felipe Mendota is the only one we need, no, we need both systems. So 6 to 3 is ready to go with needs some disconnects on the pole, and then we're working on the other one. So the thing is to give you an absolute, to say this has to follow this in absolute form, no, it's not true. We're getting more of a reliability in our system because we've got multiple places to pick up and refeed stuff from. But the thing is like, for example, after the report was done by myself, I got the Munis numbers, okay? And then all of a sudden, now that you got the Munis numbers, along with the CIP numbers, now you can put something together, but it's a living document. I was playing catch up for a couple days trying to write it and then backfill it and then come back and redo it again. So this is my WAG, my best guess.
No, I'm not criticizing you. I think it's an excellent, I'm just saying.
But I don't want to give the council and the general public a lot of information that could be put in there. Okay, to where if somebody wants to mess this town up, it's only going to take a couple more pieces of the puzzle to complete it and cause some mischief.
Well, we have to decide then where to draw the line, you know. If we don't want to give them that information, we should say that too. Like, we're not going to give you this information because there's a risk to the public, but nevertheless, you know, in other words, I'm just viewing it from these guys are not electrical people. They have to vote on this. You know, that's my philosophy. So you have to somehow give them enough information that they can have an educated opinion on this rather than saying, well, we'll just trust whoever we want to trust. So if these things don't have to happen in a specific order, maybe we should take that part out then.
Just to go back to the schedule real quick, you can certainly make modifications today. If there's additional modifications, it would be tight, but if, you know, if our next meeting is on March 3rd, which I'm assuming it will be, you could, we could get a tentative agenda item to council for the March meeting, which I assume would be March 9th, I think. And provide the report, and as a backup, we can do the staff report for the agenda, and then just once the report, if March 3rd, again, that's pretty tight. But we could make that report available to council in March, which would meet the overall deadline for the eventual adoption of the CIP in May, and the tentative in March.
I wouldn't mind doing that, just discussing this some more, because I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so you don't have to finalize it today. That would be preferential from my perspective.
That's just me, though. If other people are happy, it's a committee, not one guy.
Well, it depends how many tweaks, because I have a few tweaks, but I think we can do that in the next 15 minutes. So it depends if we can do your tweaks or explain your tweaks in the 15 minutes also. So yes, the other one took longer than I expected, and we could cut the rate study a little short, and we could do that in the regular meeting, possibly a little more too. So we might have another an extra half hour. It all depends how many, because if we don't rearrange things, I think I understand what Greg, I agree with Greg, it's easy, because so first off, number one says, okay, here's what has to be done, and it's somewhat of an order. And then the Red Mountain and substation, the San Felipe is, well, you got, okay, I see what you're saying. You want San Felipe above he put them in order of how the numbers are. That's what he did.
That's my point, but maybe we should order them in order of priority. We can have our own priorities. I mean, they don't have to be the cities. The whole point of the mayor was we're supposed to look at this independently. We can say, okay, we look at this and we think, based on what we know, they should be done in this order. But because of the urgency of, whatever.
Yeah, please, yeah. And then if you can do the Zoom again, or the Zoom to a higher point would be great again.
My glasses aren't that good. That works. Paid good money for these.
On the upside, the council seemed pretty happy with this way of proceeding, so I think we're working on the right lines of producing these reports for them. But
what is the rest of the committee? Ned, you've done stuff like this in the past. How do you think, what do you think would be beneficial, and so do we take something and try to make it fit in today, or do we take the extra time and do a little bit more in the future? I think that's the bottom line today.
I read through it, and most of what I saw looked pretty good. I mean, the sequences, I had a couple of questions on a couple of things, but for the most part, I think it looks pretty good when I read through it. So I know we want to be careful how much we put out there, but I was pretty happy with it. There were a couple of things that I could maybe comment on, but not a whole lot.
Well, I think the biggest thing is if I'm George, is your biggest concern is just realigning them? Is that your biggest concern?
Well, yes, there's that, and then so the mayor wanted, when I presented the stuff with assistance from Dennis. I think he wanted priorities, and he wanted to know if we think these projects can be done on the time scale that's allocated to them. So those are things I'd like to see in the report, because that's what he wanted to see. So
I think we could go through them pretty quick. I know one of the things I looked at, this Red Mountain distribution line, as I recall, that's a 12 kV to 2300 volt transformer, isn't it, feeds the existing system now that goes up to Red Mountain? No. I thought it had because the old Delta 2300 volt system that went up on top.
It's a 4160 to 24.
Oh, is it 4160 down at the bottom, down by the Park Service? I was thinking that was a 12 kV. It's not a dual voltage transformer? Okay, well that does need to be done then, yeah, if we're going to do that. So that's a good place for that project to be where it's at then. We could just go through them one by one and probably knock them off pretty quick.
Well, the biggest thing is, I guess, rearranging them is a little time consuming, but it's not as bad. But it depends, Greg, if you felt that causes any concern with what security or if we can really get in that order. I guess 3 and 4 are going to be done later.
There was 2 drivers to write in the report. The first driver was what year they were supposed to be started in, and that's what drove the sequence. So if you look, for example, on Electric 20-103, that's moved to FY22. That is why that's the first one on the sheet. the report. If you look at the substation 3 rebuild, that's pushed all the way out to FY '23, and that is why that is noted in the report when it's going to be done. Okay, if you go to 106, substation 4 rebuild, that was also pushed out. So that says construction to start in '25. There's no reason to put them in order because it says the date and the year on them.
It's true. It just takes a little bit extra reading, and even
Well,
even if you put them in order, that doesn't mean that they'll read it that way either.
This is a report that we were asked to do for the city council. So if you go by the year that it's supposed to be done, that's how the report is written, with the dates in the report. And you'll notice I did not abbreviate the FY date. It's the whole date, 2024, 2025. Everything's there, okay? The problem is, this report is only good as to the day and the minute and the time it was written, because the utility CIP report can change at any day.
Well, the other thing is okay, so what we could do is if it's feasible, so if we take the time real quickly, and, you know, my comments might be too lengthy too, so we'll have to see.
Well,
Is if we did one as a tentative report, and then we say, okay, we're gonna go through it and look at it a little more closely for the final report. Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just gonna make the comment, I would think you would attach the 5-year plan to the report.
I did.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And then by numbering it, because if you take them out of number, that's gonna confuse the people too. So I understand. I think let's just leave it in the order. Let's go through it really quick, see what we can get to, and if we have to, I think we can do almost everything for the rate study in the regular meeting.
The biggest thing I think we should do is we should include the munis numbers to the report numbers.
And I have that.
And
I
make
gave that-
sure that they're highlighted, like in bold, like I did on the different
Right.
pages. And the reason I did this, and I spent the effort to do it, is the meeting I think we had, Dennis, wasn't that like 2 hours or 2.5 hours long?
2.5.
Yeah, and so we went through every line item, but the thing is, it has to be done in calendar or chronological order by date. Okay, we can move some of the numbers around, but I think the biggest outcome of this, and I've got the original one, and Dennis can agree with me or not, but we leveled the playing field as to money.
Right,
Instead of having a
right.
spike of $6 million on one FY, what was it, 24?
Yes.
I think it was 6 million something dollars, almost $7 million, we're down to 5.3.
Yeah, we reduced the spike in 22 and 24.
Yeah.
Well,
and
let's go from the very top and see what we can get to. If we can get to it and people are satisfied that we can vote on it, I guess we can even modify it a little bit in the regular time, can't we? Regular meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, then we can do that too. So if we go to the very top, Josh? And my recommendation was that we just do like we did on the other one, where we say that it was drafted today's date, and then it was a workshop and voted on in the regular meeting. Is that okay to have that on there? Okay, go ahead. Okay, and then, so do we want drafted in the workshop and voted, or do we just say, we want to say drafted? What is that way it's clear, I guess, that it was voted on. I think we did that in the other one. So if, Josh, go ahead and put the voted on, as on below it. Okay, thanks a lot. So now the first, sorry to interrupt you guys, but the first paragraph, Ned, you said the first paragraph you had a concern?
Just a clarification on the last sentence where it talks about, except the last stage where the transformers are attached to power poles or located on, well, they're basically pad mount transformers. They're located on the ground. They're not we don't have any underground vaults, and it's just not a big deal, but.
Okay, what do you want to change it to? Just delete it, or delete that or? From the or on? Is that okay?
Yeah, you could go ahead and do that. Although it's kind of confused some people, because we do have we almost have as many probably more pad mount transformers than we do pole mounted transformers.
You just want to say pad mounted instead of underground vaults?
Transformers.
Say or pad mounted
Or pad mounted transformers, yeah, say
Okay.
that. Or pad mounted transformers.
Okay, anybody else have anything on the first paragraph? Okay, going to the second paragraph. Anybody have on the second paragraph? So most of the 5-year electrical capital improvements. Anybody have anything in there? Okay, going to the third paragraph. The number 1 says 1, to carry out this major upgrade of electrical system without service. Anything there? So was that part of anything you were looking at, George? Was that starting there? You're concerned?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not as knowledgeable as Greg. I thought the San Felipe project had to be done before the rebuild, but apparently it doesn't, right? Is that correct? Or?
I'll let you know a little bit later, but that's correct as far as I know right now, because I've driven these circuits, so I know what we got going on and what else is happening. The only thing that we're gonna need to do is put a set of pole top disconnects up on the substation 3.
Okay, I mean, we can change our minds, you know, we do our best with what we have now, so.
Exactly, at the point in time, this is how it all laid out.
Okay.
Okay, then I'm,
So if the second sentence is, the one sentence there is good. Project numbers, my suggestion is to put I don't know, if, Eileen, if you'd help me, if a colon works there or not, and then we would put munis project / SIP project numbers. That way we include both things. Is a colon after project numbers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then, okay.
But I have a question back up to the previous paragraph. Why is the number 1 there?
I think we originally had 2 comments there. Was that, Greg, do you want to just get rid of that and get rid of the 1? Okay, yeah, why don't we just get rid of the 1 then? So if you can go back up and get rid of the 1, or did you already get it? I guess you already did it. Yeah, so do you want it indented? Do we want it indented or just take the indent out?
Take it out.
Okay. There you go, perfect. Okay, so munis code, okay. So then I just made a few little changes, so all the substations should be capitalized. So picky, but substation, so if the first one for Red Mountain, substation 4, very first, if you can, I don't know if you can do a search and replace. Is that what you want to do? Yeah. Because it's a title of, am I missing something, Eileen? I'm using you as my grammar expert, so. Anybody else have anything with the electric 2103, so the Red Mountain? Okay.
well, actually, I have a generic comment for those projects. It's the mayor wanted to know whether we think they can be done in a timely manner. So it would help to put in a comment, how long do we think this would take? I know we can change our minds, but as of now, how long do we think this project would take?
We don't even have engineering for it yet, so I can't give you how long it's gonna take if we don't have engineering.
So then we might want to say that. We have no idea how long this will take.
Well, it says right here, it says it's to be completed in fiscal year 22. So the best guess right now, it's in there, it says it can be completed in fiscal year 22.
Right, and that's all I was able to do because that gives them some breathing room. But like I said, because to get into the details of this, George, Mile High Drones did not fly this circuit. We don't know the pole assessment condition. So do you assume on 100% pole replacement, or do you consider a 60% pole replacement? We're still in engineering phase. All I've done is made a commitment in paper that says, hey, based upon our best guess,
Yeah.
BMPs, probably what you are familiar with, we're gonna be done in FY '22.
Okay, that clarifies it for me then.
And-
So
and-
that's where we stand. Okay.
To provide some additional commentary on that, I think what that really is honing in on is, our ability to get them done hasn't been, once they go to construction. We've been pretty much on track once they're in construction. There haven't been a lot of deviations with regards to the actual construction schedules and completion dates. Where we're more challenged and where I think the mayor was really coming from was our ability to get the design portion of the project completed.
Mike?
And the design portion completed, and that had more to do with our internal resources, which I discussed earlier with regards to project engineering and project management.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. So is that, you still see that as a limiting factor? It might be worth, rather than doing it project by project, put in
Our
a sentence to that effect.
Yeah, we can help write that or whatever, I don't know if we can do that right now, but our multi-factor plan is to continue to use CRC for additional project support, the addition of the on-call engineering services, the staff reclassification to project engineer / project manager, and the filling of those public works positions. All of those, we think, will go a long way to meet the projects on the schedule.
Okay, well, can we put in a sentence before the thing on project numbers that the timescales, the uncertainty in the timescales for completion is determined by uncertainty in design for the projects? And so they know, they asked us this. So then they know that's what you're telling me, I think.
Well, and I can tell you, I will be commenting directly to City Council at the budget with regards to this very issue on February 10th.
Right, but let's put a sentence into that effect.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, just letting you know, we do intend on saying, here's the plan moving
Unless
forward.
people object. If they don't want that in there, it's okay too. I don't know.
No, I agree. We should have a sentence in there.
Okay, then I'll try and conjure something up for Joshua there. So it's at the end of the sentence where it says the next 5 years, Joshua, prior to where it says project numbers. I can't quite see what you're doing. Yeah, you look like you're there. So the limiting factor in determining completion of the project is the design phase, which has considerable uncertainties associated with it.
Well,
Or something like that.
Is it the limiting or one of the limiting
Well, the
factors?
main
Probably
factor.
the main limiting, yeah.
Okay, but it's not, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's go with the
Well,
main.
I think heretofore it was a combination of the resources and the funds available, going back in time. Now I think it's really, the funds are available, it's the resources to get it
So
out the
that
door.
lets them know at least that's where we're at with this.
Okay.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
That's what I said. Sorry, I didn't say stop. I hope you didn't write everything. I said delete. So the limiting factor for the completion time for the project is the design phase where most of the uncertainties lie. Something like that. I can't see I'm looking on my computer. Yeah, that's good for me.
Okay, so, maybe it's just as easy to, well, let me read it and then Joshua's got a copy of mine up. So on electric, 2105, the next rebuild 3, what I did is just add the information that we have in the 22, capital, which states that substation number 3, to meet new federal requirements, this needs to be done so the substation number 3 can replace substation number 2, which will be removed in fiscal year 26. It is also necessary to complete the 4 kV and the 12 kV conversion. So I just wanted to add a little bit to say why that was done as we had it in our last report. Does that sound okay? Yeah. And then he's putting it up there. Now, the only thing is we get to remove, so when you get to fiscal year 26, you want to stop right there? Oops, uh-oh, I got pushed in the wrong spot. So do we want to say tentatively, or do you want to just say it like that? Do you want to say actually in 26, or you want to say tentatively removed in 26? What's the,
We can change that on next year's 5-year capital plan.
just leave it as it?
Leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Okay,
That's the best guess.
gotcha. Just want to make sure that, okay. Okay, so if you, okay, so then, yeah, so it's also, so if you want to go ahead and add to the, it's also necessary to complete. So George, see in this one, they've got, it states that it's completed in 2024, so we've got the time frame in that sentence.
Sorry, I've spaced out. Which number is that now?
105. So actually, Greg has put all the, that's when it's going to be completed.
Right, sorry, yeah, that's, you're right, yeah.
Okay.
No, that works, sorry, yeah.
Anybody else got anything with that one?
Just really quick, like I said before, this is a living document. This is the best possible way to define it with the additional red, the stuff we're going through right now. But I guarantee you, next year, when we do this 5-year capital plan, it's gonna be changing
Oh, I
again.
know, yeah, guarantee it.
So this is the report that'll be given to the city council in wherever, and they can say, okay, and then I do recommend that someplace we put, if there's questions that need to be answered and further, contact the Utility Advisory Committee.
Okay, so for 2106, I don't have anything. Does anybody, that's the Ford substation number 4 rebuild. Does anybody got anything on that? Okay, so Josh is putting,
One thing I want to note, so y'all understand, when you see, like, for example, electric 20-105, there's no munis number. So there's no money budgeted for this plan. Just like in 20-106, there's no money budgeted for this plan. Okay, so that's why there's not going to be a munis number behind it.
right, because
Okay, so everybody understands that. The munis number is what funds the project.
okay, good, that's a good point. Because the 108 is your first munis number. So if you put the munis number in the beginning there, Josh, right quick, yeah, go to the, yeah, right before electric, and, yeah, there you go. Slash air, so that's what, do you have something, George?
Wait, I'm panicking a bit now from Greg's comment, because you said for 2105, there's no munis number? Or did I miss something?
Yeah, there's no money.
But how can we budget $3.5 million in the CIP if there's no money?
Because we haven't presented the CIP to city council to get money.
So the munis number comes after the 5-year CIP?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And it wasn't in last year's CIP?
That's correct.
The munis
Wow.
number doesn't come till, I mean, because the
funded.
city council approves them annually.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing, because this project was viewed as absolutely essential for many years.
That one has a munis number because the 21 has already been put in the budget. So if you look at your December report,
Yeah, good point.
December report? No,
the one I gave you, this one right
the
here?
substation number 3?
No, the one you guys were just talking
With the
about.
105 was substation number 3.
Right, and that has not, because that
That
is a
does not.
FY '23.
He was just asking about E2105.
No, we were saying about
Okay.
2105. 2105.
Okay, so the ones on here, the 21 is in there, it's just the, but if there's money being added to a project, then the munis number is still gonna be there.
Right, so what I did is I added the munis numbers from here to here. So
Okay.
that's what I gave to Josh. That's what we're gonna go through.
Okay.
So if they do exist, that's what I copied.
Correct, yeah.
So, because the first munis number was the one, so then if Josh added are you okay with what Josh added? It's so on San Felipe, I can read it real quick, or people can read it. What do you want to do? So this one, George, this one tells you this project must be completed before the project can be started. Now, Greg, we just talked, is that okay, or do you prefer not to put that now?
No, this is fine. This just gives more flexibility for our electrical department to be able to switch and manage loads to different substations.
Okay,
So this is a fine statement,
okay,
okay? And I'll read it if you want.
No, I think we got it, so, everybody read it? So sorry, didn't realize how close we were on.
Right.
Okay, so then 2112, we just add the munis number, and that's tie 6364. It's stated when it's going to be completed and gives you a basic information. Is there anything anybody else wants on that? Okay, so Josh is adding, so we can go, if we're going too fast, you can stop us on, no, you're fine, Just make sure there's the headroom is all. So on 2115 substation 5, I suggest, it says includes new transformers and reconstruction of the existing transformer slabs.
Okay, now, based upon that statement and when this was written and what we were working on, I have come to a decision myself on my own that the select transformers we're discussing about putting in there, if the president in what he's doing right now, going green, the size of the cans are not going to be big enough to handle the load. So based upon the design, they're going to have to incorporate the WAG figure, which I think the cans are going to go from a 22 MVA to a 33. The reason for that is, everybody, is because he's talking about getting rid of natural gas for heating. He's talking about getting rid of natural gas for cooking and heating water, cooking, and for heating in the winter.
Right, well, do you want to, I'm sorry to push you, but do we want to add something here to cover that, or?
No, because what I'm saying is, it says includes new transformers, and it should be in parentheses, size to be determined.
Well, why don't you put that in there, then that'll be great.
Okay?
And then it puts a placeholder for all of us.
And then Larry, it looks like everything's okay until we get down to E21-101. Because that has a munis number in it.
Yep, the rest of them, the rest of these are all munis number changes, except for, where are you at?
I'm looking at the bottom of electrical, E21-101, or.
Right, we add the munis on. So what I'm thinking about doing is if, okay, let's jump down to, because if I can get Josh to, if you agree that add the munis numbers and just a few minor corrections, have him do that while we're talking about the rate structure really quick, then the next one is water 2106. Water 106, the copper service line. And so so are you okay with doing that, Josh, while we move on? Okay. Then what I put in there is that these old polyurethane lines, because I think we all sort of got a little confused, and it seems like that helps a little bit. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you add that in there on 2106. All right. Okay.
I had one generic comment. We might want to explain to them what the munis numbers are, because we're just putting these numbers in without, somewhere in there, just say, the first number is this, the second number is this, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, we don't say what the munis number is, but that's what I did. It's project numbers, munis project. That's what we started with earlier.
Is that in there somewhere? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm losing my focus.
Well, we'll go over it before we vote on it and make sure because we're gonna have to switch over. We've got 2 minutes left here, and then we're gonna have to switch over, finish up, and then come back to it. The other one I think is just a minor change that I had. The major one I've got is on sewer. Can you jump down to sewer 21104? And then what I've got instead of to clean the sewer at the very end, what we had in the other report is that disinfect the treated wastewater prior to discharge to the desert. Did I misunderstand anything there? Is that?
That's right.
Okay, so if we can add that in, Josh, then I think then there's just, if Josh completes the little things, that I added. Now, George, did you have anything else that you wanted? Okay, so let's do that. Let's switch over to the rate study really quick, and then we'll finish this in the regular meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's go to the rate study really quick. And my suggestion is that we discuss the, and I think we talked about it last time, was discuss the 3% reduction and the $10. And it's gonna, I believe this will probably be in several phases. We want a general vote taken to see if we, agree that's what we want to pass on to council, is that we do $3 and $10 reduction. And that might be just in a motion in the next meeting. We just do a motion and with a very basic aspect. And then we go with further information and say, okay, now we have to say what that 3% is, the $10 is, because I'm not sure I agree with everything that Ref Tillis did. So we have to work on that, and then we go further on. And as far as the rest of the rate study goes, we do it in phases over the next several months.
Well, I don't agree with that, because if we're going to have a policy, it has to be based on something. So presumably if we're recommending 3%, it's based on the Raf Tillis report. But as I've outlined before, and it got worse in this report, the Raf Tillis report, to my mind, is not trustworthy. It's full of they got rid of the franchise fee, and they got rid of the increase to the central services fee, say for the electric, which I've been focusing on, and then they increased the costs. Well, how can that be? It can't get more expensive when your revenue requirement decreases by over $1 million. And in some of their tables, there is a franchise fee. In some of their tables, there isn't a franchise fee. And so I just think the report is not, and I can tell you which ones. I know we're limited for time. So I don't think this report is trustworthy, and I don't see how we can make a recommendation based on nothing. I mean, we should study the matter and then say, here's what we think needs to happen with the utilities, rather than just, we've been thrown a sort of piece of something on our table, and I just don't think we can evaluate it because the report is not trustworthy. It's full of mistakes.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Greg.
What we're trying to do is give a broad overview. We have ground on this report to where we know it's got some errors in it, whether they be minor or broad, but we do agree overall in the reduction. Now, the thing that's very scary, if you get down into the nuts and bolts of it, the percentage of reduction on service, we'll say water, is approximately 33%. From your current bill to what the proposed bill is, reduction of $10 a month is approximately 33%. The electric is not the service charge the electric, but the rate on the electric. Okay, 3% is something that is not too impossible to take and absorb. The biggest problem we went back to on the water was we get into the larger meters, and when you ratio out that percentage on your larger meters, you're talking about one heck of a reduction in income for the water service charge. My recommendation is, in doing the study on it, is we cap our rate reduction on the water at the 4-inch meter size. Okay? I think that's what we were talking about, was the 2-inch meter size. Sorry, let me check that. 2-inch meter size, and we cap it. We give that same rate reduction on both residential, multi-unit, and commercial. We revisit the large water meters and figure out a different rate structure other than what Ref Tillis has recommended, because that'll be a hell of a shock to the system money-wise. And I guarantee you I can handle a 2-inch meter, but I can't handle a 6-inch meter by myself. Okay, so the equipment to work on the system is going to be a lot different. And that's what I'm recommending myself looking at it. We take our rate reduction, cap it at a 2-inch water meter, and then we revisit the larger bore meters at a little bit later date to give us some breathing room.
Eileen, I saw you were near the mic.
Oh, shoot, I forgot where I was at. Well, I agree with George on the inaccuracies in a lot of the tables. For an example is that we pointed out, Greg pointed out that the table that showed the accelerated payments on the bond is still wrong. And that's just one example. So I agree that the report is faulty, but it's what we have and what we have to work with. So all we can do is tell the council that we disagree with the report and where we find it faulty. As far as Greg's comment, I'm not sure I understood what he was talking about on the reduction for the water-based charge. If he was suggesting that we go with their recommendations up to 4 inches?
Up to 2 inches.
Up to 2 inches.
Right. And I think we're going to have to put that into the main meeting to get, I guess what I'd like to do right now is just see if we can sort of get an idea, if it's even votable on in the next meeting, for the 3% and the 10%. And I guess to make sure we're also clear is that we're also saying that, so we're going to put the rest of the recommendations on hold, and we're definitely not going to agree with the cost of service increase for at least some time, if we're going to put that on hold and discuss it. So enough time that the 3% is reasonable. And I think the report, from what the study I reviewed in the report, is that they do show, their numbers show that 3% is feasible. I need to do some more thorough looking, but I think even though there's flaws, their 3% and the $10 is, they show that it is feasible. Now, how they break it out, that's something we want to do. So that's why I want to do this in stages, is just say 3% is doable. Let's look at that. So I need to make sure what Dennis needs and what to take to the city council. But we're sort of on a short scale, so we can't start from the beginning. We just don't have the time if we're going to get it in for July, if I understand correctly. So we need some basis. And I think most of it for 3% and the $10 is there. Now we just need to go on. George?
Yeah, I just don't agree. We can disagree, but I can go on to the details. But the O&M expenses have the franchise fee removed, and then it gets back in, and it's just not a coherent report. So if we're saying, well, 3% is good, why not 5%? Why not 6%? We're saying, well, that sounds good to us, but that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be having an analysis which says, well, we think is justified, not because we think it feels good. It feels like a reasonable number. Based on what? These numbers are not credible in this report. Again, I can bore you all to death by showing you. We don't have time. I'm happy to do it.
Well, I think
so how are we supposed to decide?
I don't know, from what I saw, most of the plan information is from the city numbers, and I don't think those are as flawed as some of the other reports. So I guess I'm just going to go, put everybody on the spot. So Marty, what do you think?
I go along with the 3% in the reduction in the rate for the power and the $10 on the water. And we, continue to look at this in the future.
Ned?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the 3% reduction in the $10 on the customer, leave that alone. And I haven't studied it enough to have a real strong opinion on the balance of it. It looks a little bit troubling that they are going to reduce those large water users that much. That's the thing that's got me a little bit concerned. If we can absorb that, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question.
Well, I think, like I said, tonight, what I'm asking for in the next meeting's vote is just that we say 3% and $10, and that we're not agreeing to the way that the report said it's going to be done. We're just saying we need to relook at that and see if it's doable.
I would agree with that.
And that way, then we could start the resolutions. Dennis, correct? So we could start a resolution to look at what that would look like. You're going to start writing the resolution drafting.
Apologize. We could certainly start looking at what the resolutions would look at, but I think at the end of the day, from a process perspective, recommendations in my mind, and we can certainly discuss this, it's just not me. But I'm thinking, not knowing we're guessing whether the city council is going to agree with the recommendations from the utility advisory committee or not. I suspect they will, because that's what they're relying on this committee for, but they may not. So then comes the question is, do we start working on those resolutions before the city has agreed, has accepted those recommendations? We can certainly draft them, and it could change.
Well,
and we can certainly start putting them together and putting them in
I mean, I think
at least in a form where if they do change, we can make the changes on the run.
it undermines our credibility with the council if they say, well, we recommend 3%, and then they say why, and we say we don't know.
yes,
No-
we do know, George. We have.
Well, okay, you show me the figures in the report then. Let's go over the report then.
We might, 3% is a reasonable, but we gotta stop, that's not, let's stop arguing right there. The first thing we have to know is how important is something to get in front of the council? How fast do we have to get it, and how much do we have to vote tonight? My understanding, Dennis, is that you wanted something voted on tonight so we can get something in front of the council so they can start deciding if they agree with our concept. All we're doing is the concept right now, George.
No, we're not. We're
trying-
doing a number. A number isn't a concept. We're saying 3%, not 4%, not 2%.
Hang on.
Sorry, I'm getting agitated. I'm a scientist.
No, I understand, but the problem is you want hard math. Okay, based upon what we've got as a mathematical question and equation is Raftelis's report. Now, we're putting a nail in the end of it to where our rate reduction on service charges for water stops at the 2-inch meter. Okay, we are not going to go any further right now until we get time to sit back and look at the impact of what Raftelis's report states for the larger bore meters. I think that'll put the water system in jeopardy because we have to look at three things. Number one, we have to look at the gallons of consumption on our large customers, okay? We've got one that I still haven't heard about, and to belabor the fact, we got to get out, take a break and get things cleaned up, but the Muni Golf Park, okay, that I think can be fixed to where we go on raw water. But guess what? That would affect the charges on the big meters on the water side. And that's where I feel the discount that Raftelis is recommending on the large bore customers is not correct. We're already giving the city a break on their water rates and their electric rates. We're charging them at wholesale, okay? And these are the things it's getting too convoluted. And I honestly, George, I have not seen a final report from Raftelis.
You have a final
Yeah, we
report.
sent them out.
Yeah, but I'm saying, is that the one that's been presented to city council?
It has been provided to city council.
Okay, and that's where city council took and made a statement 2 meetings ago or something where they jumped the gun and got ahead of the schedule because we had just talked about it and they went ahead and made a statement on it.
But I mean, I've read the report, and for example, I don't understand how you can remove a franchise fee and a central services fee and then tell the users they have to pay more. How is that math supposed to work? So in other words, I don't understand what this 3% number is based on. I'm just repeating myself. On the water, I think lowering the water rates when the water supply is diminishing is a mistake.
But we're not lowering the rates, we're lowering the service charge, not the rates on the water.
Well, charging people less for water.
No, not less for water, less for services. In other words, the ability for somebody to come out and service a water meter at the street and fix the water lateral coming off the main into your water meter. That's all the service charge is. It's not the rates per gallon of water.
Okay,
Okay.
but I think we have a big problem with water. I haven't looked at the water as carefully, but we should be charging people more for water as an incentive to use less.
Well, I think
because as Dennis says, that we're using more water and we're saying, hey, your bill's going to go down.
But I think
Doesn't
what we
make
ought to
any
do is send everybody bottled water.
Well, anyway,
Charge them that rate.
this report, I just don't feel I can justify a number to the council. I agree with Larry. If you're talking about concepts, we can talk about concepts all day long, but that's not what we're doing. We're saying we recommend a specific number. And if someone says why, we say we don't know. It just seems plausible. I just don't think that's... Why have professionals like you with decades of experience in this business to just say, well, we didn't read the report, but it seems like...
we read the report.
No, we've read it.
Okay, then
No,
explain to me why they're raising the rates in Raftelis when they've removed the franchise fee from their draft report relative to their final report.
Raising the rates, what, raising the
They're
rates?
charging
or
more,
they're-
you pay more for electricity when they've removed the franchise fee.
You talking about the cost of service?
I'm talking about their figure 5. Average residential monthly bill goes up in their final report after they've removed the franchise fee.
Okay, we'll have to say again, a lot of those figures don't, but from what I saw, their financial, if you look at their section 3 with their financial documents, justifies a 3%. They show a 3%, and the rates, utilities can survive their 3% aspect. Now, I'm hearing everybody else has looked at it. They're looking at the same thing. And the 3% in their financial statements look good. Now, a lot of their other reports, I'm in agreement. I don't necessarily agree with it. But if you look at the financial report, that has a lot of background.
Okay, well then explain to me why in table 33, the O&M functionalization is unchanged. They want $11.8 million for O&M after removal of the franchise fee. It hasn't changed between the two reports. How can that be?
I'd have to go look at.
Well, you haven't looked at it.
I've looked through
why
this
can't you-
report. Because I've memorized every single
Well,
thing.
that's what it is. It's numbers. It's a numbers game. You're saying you've done the math. I'm saying explain to me then this error and this, what the hell's going on?
Well, we all need to sit down and look at it, but that's the second
That's
step.
our job.
The second step, we have to get to it. Okay?
No.
You've only.
No.
There again, I'm not going to argue on this thing. We don't have the time.
I realize I'm in a minority. I appreciate that. And I have to respect the other members of the committee. But I think we should read these reports, look at the numbers to see if the math makes sense. You can't have a franchise fee in one table and not in another, and saying, based on this, we recommend 3%. I disagree. I've said my piece. I'll stop there.
One thing that I would say, George, is one of the things that makes me comfortable in this 3% reduction is looking at the revenues and expenses in the electric utilities for the last several years since we have increased rates in 2018. In every year, our revenues are higher than our expenses, and the city is making money there. And so that comforts me, and regardless of what Raftelis is saying.
By how much? How many more millions are they pulling in than... Again, it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game, but if you look at the municipality charters, they also cannot show a profit on any electric or service they have. It has to be a zero wash. So that's what the problem is right now. We're trying to get more in line before we get in trouble with the state as to making a profit as a municipality. We've got a cushion in our reserve fund, and this is a target number that we cannot substantiate entirety with the figures and calculations that Raftelis has done. But based upon our monthly statements or our what is it, every 3 months, Marty? Every month it comes out, you can look at the money we're bringing in versus the expenses we're having to pay out, and we're constantly in a positive cash flow. Now, the
But by
problem
how
is,
much?
well, we've
Is it
done
3%?
Yeah, it's even greater than 3%.
Well, then let's recommend more than 3%.
No, I want to start little. I don't want to take the elephant in one bite. I want to start very small. And 3%, we'll run it for a year and see what it comes out at. But the thing is, SNWA, when they come in and they say, we want more money for the water we're delivering you, that's when we're going to get to where we have to look at, okay, is that going to affect our billables and how much is it going to affect? But you got to understand, the water side, we're looking at the service charge. The electric side, we're looking at the rate that we're paying for electricity, and we can absorb 3% reduction in electric cost. So that would go from 9.7 cents at the retail rate, take 3%, because you're good at math, and that's what the new rate will be. But guess what? If you look at the study for the last 5 years for electric, which I have at the house in 3-ring binders, 3%'s nothing. We're not going to get hurt at all by that. You're not going to see an increase in electric sales. You're going to see a decrease. What you don't want to monkey with, which is your favorite one, is the wholesale cost of electricity, which is what the solar people that are putting solar on the roofs of Boulder City are being able to take and figure as a calculation for payback on your solar.
Okay,
So that's what's going on. So we need to break right now and take a little rest.
Well, we're a committee, and I respect the group judgment. That's why we have 7 people with different ideas, and I respect.
Can I just throw in one comment real fast? What I would recommend is that everybody to really take, not right now, but take a hard look at table 18, because that shows your electric utility cash flows with existing revenues. Table 19 shows over the 5-year period the electric utility cash flows, reduced revenues, so that includes the 3% reduction. And in those tables, you can look at the fund balances at the end of the planning period, and that gives you, I think, a good, clear picture on where the health of the utility stands. Same thing with regards to, that's table 19, table 20, and then on the water, which, because we're talking about the water service charge, I would suggest taking a hard look at table 21, table 22, and table 23, because there again, it shows the fund balances with the $10 reduction on the service charge, and it shows you where we are at the end of the planning period. So, at the end of the day, you want the utility to be healthy financially. You want it to be able to pay for those ongoing capital projects, because we don't know what they're going to look like, beyond FY26. And so, does it sound like a lot of money to have a $9 million fund balance at the end of 26? $9 million sounds like a lot of money, but in terms of utility, it's really not that much. So it's a couple of projects.
The fund balance is going up because they're actually charging us the franchise fee, although they're saying they're not.
No,
That's why it's
they're,
going
yeah,
up.
you need
Table
to put-
22.
You need to show us that, but we don't have time now.
I'd be more than happy to show you.
Okay,
I can show you offline.
We'll have to show, but unfortunately, Dennis, we gotta get the comment
Yep.
period. We
No,
gotta
and
get-
I just want
We're gonna have to, I'm sorry, you got one more second, you got a second to finish up?
No, that was it. I think those tables, tell a really good high-level picture of what's going on.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we have to stop, go to comment period, and then give them time to finish rolling. So, let's bring up the comment. So now I guess we're ending the workshop except for the comment period.
Hold on, stop
Yep.
responding.
Okay.
We don't have time. Yes, it'd be bad this time.
Well, as soon as we're done, then well, so have I, so maybe I've missed something. No.
Yes, Fred Volz again. 2 quick points. To put your discussion about the rate reduction possibility in context, we would be losing from the residential just a little bit over $800,000 a year by implementing the $10 per month reduction in the service fee. If we have that sort of surplus, fine, but I would strongly encourage you not to be doing any rate reductions at this point until you have a better handle on what the actual revenue requirement is after this Raftellus report is somehow edited so that it is a little more consistent. It is not good at this point. It is unwise to be proposing anything and then have to take it back. Doesn't matter whether it's 3% or 5% or 1%. You just shouldn't futz with it until the numbers are more secure. And one other final comment, it is totally unacceptable that the finance department, that seems to have almost complete autonomy to throw these numbers together, was not present today to talk about the operations and maintenance, and won't also be present to talk about their allocation. Thank you.
Thanks. So now we're going to, that ends, we okay? I'm done whatever I have to do to get.
Just end the meeting, that's all.
I'm trying. We're done. Bye.